And we are live. Hello, everybody. We are back. Chuck Todd, Chris Cillizza, Jeffrey Skelly, Decision Desk HQ. Polls are closing in most of the state of Kentucky about 35 to 40 seconds ago. The rest of the state of Kentucky will close at 7 p.m. along. We've got Georgia at 7 p.m., Alabama at 8 p.m., Pennsylvania at 8 p.m., and, of course, the all-mail-in election at 11 p.m. in Oregon. We are not promising that we're going to be here through Oregon. All right, I'm not going to sit here and promise you a 6-hour monster live stream on a May night.
That's election night. That's election.
We're going 24 hours.
Yeah, totally.
But we do promise you we are staying on until calls in Georgia, Alabama, Pennsylvania, and of course, probably the race that Washington is at least most curious about in the moment, Kentucky and Thomas Massie. Chris Cillizza.
Yes, Chuck?
No, I'm just throwing it over to you, my friend.
I think we've done a bunch of these, so I've been thinking out loud a lot. But I will say, like,
do talk while you think. We are on a live stream.
Yeah, I know. It is a weird thing for me that, like, this month is probably going to be the worst month for sort of the Republican Party's fate in the fall, right? Like just like
it's going to be a mad month for general elections.
Yes. Yeah. And yet, like, Donald Trump, if Thomas Massie loses, and if Ken Paxton, which I know is next week, which we will be here, but if Ken Paxton wins, you'll have 5 of the 7 Indiana state senators beaten. You'll have, we were here Saturday night, Bill Cassidy, incumbent senator from Louisiana. Third. You'll have Thomas Massie beaten, potentially. I mean, we'll see obviously tonight. And then you might have, Ken Paxton as the, Donald Trump claiming credit for endorsing him. The usually a sort of president's fate and his party's fate move broadly kind of together. Yeah. And I look, I just think you're seeing Trump. You and I both, it's funny, I saw this, Chuck. You and I both tweeted out something very similar, which is like, if you ever needed clarity, which you shouldn't, but if you ever needed clarity that Donald Trump cares more about Donald Trump than the Republican Party, the Ken Paxton endorsement
tells you everything.
So it's just fascinating how, like, this could be a good month for Donald Trump and MAGA and a bad month for the Republican Party.
He does not care about what's in the best interest of the Republican Party. If he did, John, because what he is setting up in Texas, and look, it's funny. Before we start getting votes in, I think it's fair to say that the news, him deciding to weigh in on Paxton today, is sort of the biggest news right now.
Huge news.
Yeah. And it certainly sets the table. If Ken Paxton's the Senate nominee, I don't think the unintended consequences of this could be catastrophic for the future of the Texas Republican Party. Because if he's the nominee, the amount of resources and money that the left is going to pour into Texas that they might not pour in if Cornyn wins this primary is going to be astronomical. And the trickle-down effect here, that Paxton is the nominee, brings more Democratic money in, puts more resources on the ground, probably a House race or two might get over the line that wouldn't have gotten over the line if Cornyn's there. That governor race might get more competitive. And what you may end up having is the Democratic Party finally planting its sort of infrastructure seeds into the state because of this opportunity with Tallarico. It really is Donald Trump doing what's in the best interest of him, and literally the worst interest of the Republican Party going forward. Am I exaggerating, Skelly?
I mean, I don't think you're off base necessarily. I think I think the caveat to all this is that, of course, Paxton could very well win and probably would be favored. But you are right that the focus on this race is going to be intense, and I think there is going to be a greater belief among Democrats that they can actually win this thing. It's interesting though, Paxton and Cornyn weren't really polling all that differently against Tallarico, at least in the recent surveys testing the general election matchups that we'd seen, which was maybe not helping Cornyn's case because he was arguing that he would be the stronger general election choice. And maybe that wasn't being borne out as much by the polls as he would have hoped. I still think at the end of the day, obviously the Tallarico campaign probably has more to use against Paxton. They definitely have more to use.
But isn't this also a finding? I mean, Paxton's a terrible fundraiser.
Yes, he won't raise. I mean,
so
this is really the thing is that Republicans.
It's a
If
money.
you want to look for it, Republicans are going to have to spend a lot of money to defend Texas.
That's exactly right. Even if they win, Eric Erickson made a really good point today. Conservative guy, not a total Trump critic, but not a pro-Trump guy necessarily either. He
doesn't drink the Kool-Aid.
Right.
He just pours it so that it's on the side of the table
diluted
there for somebody. Right. Yeah.
He said, to Skelly's point, I mean, Ken Paxton can win. The problem is it's going to take real money from national Republicans because Paxton's not going to raise any money. It's going to take real money to drag him across the finish line, money that could be spent in Georgia, Michigan, New Hampshire. Those are their offensive opportunities or any of their defensive opportunities. Texas ain't cheap.
I was just going to say, it could be a really bad decision for Michael Whatley in North Carolina.
Yeah,
right. When you're starting to make
about this,
right, that's a very expensive state.
Yep.
And really uphill.
Yep.
Versus Texas, where look, they can drag Paxton over the finish line. It's a lot of money. But
that's like a $40 million bet, Chuck.
Well,
that's a lot of money.
If I'm sitting at the leadership fund, right, SLF, and I'm deciding Paxton or Whatley, I may like Whatley better. I may think he's a better guy. I may think Paxton's a total horrible, immoral human being. But Paxton's got a better shot.
Holding the Senate. Yeah.
Exactly. Hey, let's bring in our friend Kirk Beto, editor-in-chief of the Hotline. Sorry, Kirk. We kept Kirk in the green room too long. Look, he wore a tie tonight.
Well, he must have some
be
other
serious.
Yeah.
No, I knew you guys would be here. I had to look nice for you guys.
Yeah,
sure. All up for you.
So look, we started heavy on Texas, given the news of this afternoon while we wait for the first numbers coming in from Kentucky 4, which we don't have yet, but they'll be coming in soon.
Kirk,
I wanted to ask you guys, is this a you break it, you bought it situation for Senate Republicans and Trump? You're talking about how expensive it's going to be if Paxton's the nominee. I don't disagree with that at all. They're going to have to drag him kicking and screaming. I mean, he raised $1.1 million in the first 3 months of 2026. James Talarico raised $27 million. That's not 2.7. That's $27 million.
Texas.
I mean, like,
running against John Cornyn in Texas. Like, I mean, you could literally send one fundraising email out if you're Ken Paxton and raise more money than that. I mean, it's like the bare minimum to Kirk's
Let me
point.
take you back, Ohio Senate 2022. And the standoff between Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump, and Peter Thiel, if you remember that one, right? So J.D. Vance, they go in.
President Vance.
That's right.
Why he's here.
That's right. And they go in and endorse Vance, and McConnell's ripped shit about it. He doesn't like it. He's livid. He wanted Dolan. Really wanted anybody but. And Vance has no money, right? Vance was totally underfunded. They were frustrated, and they weren't. If I remember, there was a point where McConnell was threatening not to spend money there and say, if you want to elect him, you write the check, Peter Thiel.
Exactly.
Kirks, you break it, you bought it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
And at some point, they compromised, and everybody chipped in, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
They did because they realized that was the must-win race. And to your guys' point earlier about the Michael Whatley versus Ken Paxton investment here, they're going to put more money in Ken Paxton because that's more critical to Senate control than maybe trying to drag Mike Whatley across the line. But what the X factor here is that Trump is sitting on that $350 million of MAGA Inc. here. He's
got a lot of slush funds these days, doesn't he? Yeah.
He really does. He's got the political one,
them?
and he's got the lawfare one. Well, that's the $350 million question. Is he going to spend on this race or any race at all to help Republicans win? Right now, one of the reasons we're here tonight is because he's so focused on beating other Republicans and not beating up on Democrats.
Yeah.
It is remarkable, Kirk. I think that's such a good point. I was thinking about it with Paxton and Cornyn today, obviously. And it's like, if you go all the way back to 2016, and Chuck and I have talked about this a ton, is the thing that really animates Donald Trump in many ways is not the Democratic Party. It's the Republican Party, right? Like think about it. Like, who are the people he has destroyed the most? Ron DeSantis. They all happen to be from Florida. Ron DeSantis, Jeb Bush, Marco, but I mean, obviously Marco has had a renaissance.
Cheney. But keep going. Liz Cheney. We can
they're
keep going.
all Adam Kinzinger, right?
Yeah.
Ted Cruz back in the day. Lion Ted, right? Like, he gets
insulting his wife.
Right. He said his father might have been involved in the assassination of JFK Sr. rather. Like, he gets the most animated, the Massie thing, right?
Yeah.
The Bill Cassidy, the Indiana State Senate Republicans. Now, they may look like geniuses in retrospect that they didn't spend a bunch of money on that Virginia special, the Virginia referendum, but like, I don't think that was because they knew that the state Supreme Court was, it seems to me he does care more about kind of policing the Republican Party than.
But let me introduce one uncomfortable, look, there is one alternative fact here that would run counter to these, and that's his endorsement of Mike Rogers in Michigan.
Yeah,
it doesn't
over a more conservative.
He could have done
else.
It right.
Yeah.
You know, he could have. Now, maybe there was no true Trump alternative that was going to do it, and they kept him out. And, you know, every once in a while, and Daines had better luck doing this than Tim Scott has this time with the NRSC, of trying to convince Trump early to get behind some of these more electable Republicans.
Yeah.
Trump also likes to endorse winners. And to your point, there was no other alternative in Michigan here. You know, go back into the Rick Pitino.
Yeah.
Walking through that door, you know, there wasn't going to be another alternative coming through here that was more conservative, more MAGA aligned, especially one that has at least won the nomination before than Mike Rogers. But you're right. He has hitched his wagon to candidates who our friend Charlie Cook would call more exotic before. I think
you're right. I love that line from Charlie.
Exotic.
They seem to nominate more exotic candidates. And it's
Todd Akins, Christine O'Donnell.
Exactly.
Hey, Kirk.
Dr. Oz even.
Yes. Kirk, what do you make of everyone wants to know. I have two questions from my YouTube channel. Who do you think is going to win Kentucky for? And is that competitive in the general election, no matter who wins? The second question I know is a lot easier for you to answer, but can you give us your sense of where we are in this?
I think Massie's in a whole lot of trouble here. And, you know, I think we're starting to get actually the first results starting to trickle in here now as well. And I do think that Thomas Massie's in
18 votes, so not a ton here.
Let's call it here. Let's call
I don't know, Kirk. Massie's got 78% with 14.
Well, there it is. Kalshi's going to call it, so watch out. Right.
Now that is from Lewis County, which is his home base. So you know.
Why do you say, Kirk, you think it looks bad for him, other than sort of broad atmospherics that Trump has been successful in getting who he wants to get?
I think it's here going into the final as well. It's not just, you know, the polling that we've seen. It's either been tied or Massie's slightly behind, but also Massie's been going on a full court press on the media right now. He will talk to anybody and everybody. And I think that's him more setting up for what comes after you lose than necessarily preparing not to lose. That, you know, he hasn't done the whole Nathan Gonzalez, the 10 things losing campaign say yet. He hasn't said the only poll that matters is election day. But I think the writing might be on the wall here a little bit, that Massie's time might be up.
I used to the unofficial way to concede in Democratic primaries before a primary night was usually, well, like Harry Truman, watch out. If you ever heard the words Harry Truman, you're like, oh,
so
if you're hearing that at an election night speech, you're the losing candidate. You're in trouble there.
Yep. Not every vote has been counted. It's like,
Skelly, let's go to Kentucky for. When did this district stop being a swing district? Remember, there was a time, right? You had Jeff Davis, Ken Lucas. You had Nick Clooney, George Clooney's father ran in this race. Look, it was always sort of red-leaning. Ken Lucas was one of those very conservative Blue Dog Democrats that sort of fit the district. But there was a time, this was suburban Cincinnati, that was a bit more, I'd say, of a center-right to center vote. And it does seem to have gotten more conservative. I don't know if that's Ohio voters, more Cincinnati Republicans, essentially Republicans leaving Cincinnati and moving to northern Kentucky.
I mean, I think you could probably point to a few things. Kentucky, particularly the eastern part of Kentucky, especially Appalachia, but even up into the 4th district area, has generally gotten redder throughout most of the district in the era we're in. Now, it is true, I would say, that the 3 counties that are closest to Cincinnati, which are like these guys, Kenton and Campbell and Boone, they have been more competitive. And they're actually counties that, for instance, Andy Beshear carried at least a couple of them in his re-election win
Is
in
Boone the
2023.
Clooney home county? Why do I think Boone is Clooney's home county?
I think it is, right, Kurt?
It is. Yeah, it is.
There
That's
you
like
go.
where
Kirk
their
knew that
family their family base is, and they're from
right.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's basically, I think that you would look at it as, okay, those places might be getting a little closer to 50-50, but we're red leaning in most, federal elections at least.
Right.
And then the rest of the district has just gotten a lot redder.
Yeah.
And so that at the end of the day has made it, I see people in the chat mentioning the possibility of, well, if Massie loses, maybe this will be competitive in the fall. And no,
Nope.
This is a district that President Trump carried by like 36 percentage points in 2024.
Yeah, no.
This will not be a competitive race.
I mean, if it is, Democrats are going to win
have
420 seats.
2024 for what it's worth.
Right.
And this is a closed primary.
Yep, closed
Just
primary.
Republicans. Hey,
just
Kirk, can I know you got a heart out here. Can we just, I want to ask you, I'm going to ask everybody this, but what's a race that's not Kentucky 4 that is on the ballot tonight that you're watching?
Pretty closely on the Georgia governor's race, both on the Republican and Democratic side, to see if they avoid a runoff there. Keisha Lance Bottoms, the former Atlanta mayor, is the favorite in the Democratic primary. The Burt Jones and Rick Jackson fight on the Republican side is really interesting. So I'm going to be eyeing that one because that's a potential flip opportunity for Democrats. And just one thing before I get out of here about the Kentucky getting a little bit more Republican. One of the things I'm thinking about a lot tonight is that there's also an election to replace Mitch McConnell. And if this was a different Republican Party, this would kind of be a coronation night for McConnell for helping turn Kentucky red
to a reliable state.
After decades. Instead, this is all just about excising McConnell from the party and replacing him with the one who is most loyal to Trump here. And same thing for this Massie primary too.
Okay, except Andy Barr is no Trumper.
I was like, Barr was
a McConnell Republican.
He's a John Cornyn level Trumper.
Yeah.
He's adopted it. It's like
I want to say a little bit more.
You adopted the dark. I was born into it. Go ahead, Kirk.
I just want to say more of someone who is better at kissing up to Trump than necessarily maybe a loyalist here.
Yeah,
someone who can play that game a little better.
You're right. All right, Kirk, you're the man. Kirk Beto, editor-in-chief of the Hotline.
Thanks, Kirk.
Have fun tonight, boys.
I feel like Kirk is probably the best editor-in-chief the Hotline has ever had.
Is that right? Luckily, I think my titles were different. No, Jeffrey, there is one open house race in Kentucky that we might be talking about in November, and that is the Andy Barr district that he's vacating. This is Lexington. Back in the day, the Happy Chandler's grandson, Ben Chandler, right?
Yeah,
he had this district before he lost a Senate race. Boy, did he lose to Bunning? I think he lost to Bunning once.
I think he did.
Yes.
Pretty competitive race, but it was Bunning was always the target. Well, frankly, Democrats targeted McConnell a couple of times back in the 90s.
It was close in 2008.
Right.
I remember that.
That Lexington district, they've had to remap it a few times, Republicans have, in order to make it slightly safer. And if memory serves, Andy Barr had to run like 3 times before he finally won that district.
Yeah, because that's Scotty Baszler's old district, right, Chuck?
That's who I was thinking.
Yeah,
Baszler.
Scotty
Baszler.
The
Yes.
former University of Kentucky great basketball player.
Yes,
Scotty
he
Baszler,
was.
who did run against Bunning because it was the major league pitcher against the Kentucky basketball star.
Basketball player.
Yeah, that's what
it was.
That was one of the.
But yeah, that
was one of their more all-timers.
Competitive. Yeah. But that district, I remember Barr didn't. That district, is that district bad for Democrats now though, Jeffrey? That's 6, right?
It's essentially the most competitive district in the state, which is not necessarily saying much. You're talking about President Trump carried it by about 15 points,
right,
in 2024. But it is one that, for instance, Andy Beshear carried in the 2023 governor's race. Mm-hmm. So, if you're looking around, if you're Democrats, you say, okay, it might be a really good cycle.
Seat?
Maybe it's one we can pick off. Amy McGrath, in a different version of the seat, lost to Barr by a couple of points in 2018.
Right.
Now that version was, I would say, slightly less red, but it was, it's analogous at the end of the day. So these are the 2 Democrats who are, well, there's more than 2, but these are the 2 leading Democrats. Zach Dembo, who's like a former prosecutor and I think a former JAG, because he's gotten some vote vets money. And Sherilyn Stevenson is a former state rep. And they're probably going to end up facing, on the Republican side, was it Ralph Alvarado?
Yeah, he's like a state rep, right?
Yeah.
Well, he was a former state senator, and then he
Okay,
actually served as the Tennessee like health director. But
Sure.
he has Trump's endorsement, so that's
right.
obviously very helpful.
Hey, let's bring in our friend Jessica Taylor from the Cook Political Report. Hi, Jess.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you all?
We're good. You know, we're just talking Southern politics, so you came to mind.
We are a little bit. Well, remember, Kentucky is a border state, not the South. Damn it.
That's a great point, Chuck. Thank you for emphasizing that.
Bugs
Very
me
important.
when we refer to
Kentuckians.
I know it's culturally
that.
I know it's
Appalachia is different
culturally
from the Deep South. As an Appalachian. Yeah.
That's all right. I just finished. I did an interview with Lamar Alexander that'll air later this week on the Chuck.
Lamar,
Ooh, exciting.
We talked about
Lamar.
We talked about the history of Eastern Tennessee and the
love it
Union waves of those days.
God,
so
talk
Jessica,
about a state that the Republican Party has changed in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Holy moly!
I know people that Lamar stayed with, like when he walked across the state, and my dad had a red and black plaid shirt that he would refer to as his Lamar shirt. So
I love it.
Lamar walked across the state after Lawton Childs walked across Florida. It was Lawton's thing.
Lawton did
that. And then
that.
Lamar did it.
Correct. And that's all right. This, they all rip each other off.
I know. Dude, if you want to walk across the state,
that's right.
Let's Stack try that at some point.
Others have tried it.
Yes,
Lawton was the first one to do it to win. Then you had Lamar did it in Tennessee. Bob Graham had the work days, but he took that from Tom Harkin, who did work days the first time he ran for Congress. So, they all borrow from each
other.
Jessica,
is a serious form of flattery.
Let's talk Kentucky Senate, since that's going to be the first race we call tonight.
I think the biggest
was
mistake
this going
that
to be?
was this going to be competitive? I think the biggest mistake that Daniel Cameron made was running for governor, or I think he would be the.
He would have gotten reelected easily as Attorney General.
He would have gotten reelected
had his pick of offices, frankly.
Yes, you mean he should have waited and run when Bashir's term limited out in 27?
No, he should have just waited for McConnell to retire. He should have just run in this seat.
Not run at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for folks in the chat, sorry, Jessica. I see some people asking it would take them an hour to call. Half the state of Kentucky
is in central.
Roughly. Well, half geographically, more of the population's in the Eastern time zone, but a good chunk of it's in the central. And so it closes at 6 p.m. local throughout the state, which is 7 p.m. Eastern, half the state. And so no one will be projecting anything, at least responsible parties will not be projecting anything until the polls close everywhere.
So the earliest we'll call anything here
will be
7 p.m. Eastern.
Yep.
In case anybody's asking. You can deal with Kalshi and Polymarket and let them cash your bets later. Because we know that's really what they're. Jessica, let's go back to that a minute, because had Donald Trump not intervened to find Nate Morris a landing spot in the ambassadorship to Colombia, what were we staring at tonight?
I think it would be a little bit closer, perhaps, but I think Barr had the money. Daniel Cameron, one of his biggest weaknesses is he's never been a good fundraiser at all. So, I mean, he had only just gone up on air with a really small buy. I think Barr was always, I was talking with people in the state, they were like, Andy Barr is everywhere. Like, he goes to votes, he comes back to stuff. And Cameron kind of has a, not seen as maybe as hard a campaigner. I've certainly heard from people. So I think it would have been a little closer, but I still think that Andy Barr, even without Trump's endorsement, would be the favorite here tonight. But again, it just speaks to, I saw this as almost like Trump trying to get a notch. He saw that Barr was rising. And, I think that, I think that Morris was going to get really embarrassed after spending so much money. He just never caught on. I think Morris tried to get the Trump endorsement by going so hard against McConnell. And I think that Barr went about it sort of more strategically. You're right, but you're right. As I heard what you and Kirk were talking about earlier, and I agree. Barr is not a complete Trump MAGA guy, but I think he did what he had to do to get that endorsement. But he also did it by running a really strong, smart campaign. I think
it is fascinating. I'll just note there that Nate Morris, Andy Barr, and Daniel Cameron, two differing levels, all owed the start of their political careers to Mitch McConnell. Obviously, Cameron is the most tied to him, but Andy Barr too. And the primary basically was who can throw the 84-year-old man under the bus faster? Sorry,
it's like, who's your
just
daddy?
Remarkable
Remarkable
change.
You know, it's so funny. Donald Trump cares so much about loyalty, and there's no loyalty to Mitch McConnell in the state of Kentucky.
I mean, Republicans would have had the Senate a cycle earlier if they had listened to Mitch McConnell. That's what I've thought about today as we've been talking about this Cornyn non-endorsement, endorsing against Cornyn, is that, Trump, he endorsed someone like John Sununu that has criticized him. And I think that Trump was sort of more reined in early on. I think that as he's seen his approval ratings drop, where does he go? He goes to his base. Yeah. It's his basest instincts. And so
he needs his blankie. I mean, I hate to put it in those terms, but it's kind of like, right, when you're feeling you need a self-soothe, what do? You go to the people that love you.
And it's exactly what everyone around him, including people that are working for, if not Cornyn aligned PACs, that, Chris Cillizza and Tony Fabrizio, like he endorsed. And another thing, remember, the people working around Paxton are former DeSantis people too. So there was also there's sort of these consultant wars going back behind that.
Cillizza was using the Jeff Rowe stuff to mock Rowe to try to get Trump to get off of
absolutely.
Paxton. Yeah, that's such a great point.
Jess, were you surprised by that? I will admit, when I heard at 10:30 or whatever, Trump saying, I'm going to endorse, I figured it would be Cornyn, or he just wouldn't endorse at all, or he would do one of those things like he did. He would do that thing like he did. Yeah. I endorse Eric with the two Erics in Missouri.
Right.
Great.
I was surprised. I thought that it would be a dual endorsement if he was going to do anything. This sort of being too cute by half that he does, or that it would be Cornyn, which But I think that. Listen, I think that Trump, again, kind of saw the writing on the wall, and he can say, I lifted Ken Paxton, who I think probably would still be would have been a slight favorite.
Jessica, there are a few people that are going to ask about the Democratic Senate primary in Kentucky. And if you look at the ballot, it is the ghost of Democrats.
It really is.
Right? Amy McGrath, Charles Booker.
A lot of money has been spent on those two names.
Oh my
yes.
God.
A lot of email lists.
Lit just fields of money on fire for
only Jamie Harrison has lit more, I think. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Could either of these, look, it is going to be a good Democratic year. Could either of these candidates overperform, say, get into the high single digits in losing a general?
I mean, maybe, but I think it's going to be Booker, who is the most progressive. If it were McGrath, then maybe. But
he's got the Louisville base, right?
Yeah, he does. Yeah. And he's the most progressive of those candidates. So I would just have a hard time sort of seeing that. I think that Barr is someone who is broadly more acceptable to those independents and McConnell Republicans that I just have a hard time seeing it being really competitive.
Look, while we have you here, you're John Ossoff. Let's move to Georgia. Those polls will be closing at 7. You're John Ossoff tonight. You want to run off. Your potential opponent's going to be in a runoff. Who would you like to see not make that runoff? Who would you like to avoid if you're Ossoff?
That's a good question. I think Buddy Carter, honestly, who I think might come in third despite spending the most. I think Carter has he's made himself more MAGA, but he has, on some environmental stuff and different things, like he is a little bit more not to the center really, but not as far to the right as Mike Collins. I think he wants to run against Mike Collins, who again has been the weakest fundraiser. I think Derek Dooley is more of a blank slate, and Kemp. I think the Kemp ad and things too might have lifted Dooley just enough to get him into a runoff, which I'll see you all back here on June 16th celebrating my birthday for the Georgia runoff.
We would love to do that with a former Tennessee football.
I'm gonna guess.
How great is that?
Yeah, happy 21st birthday in advance.
I'm just guessing that President Trump will have endorsed Mike Collins by
That's
then.
exactly what I think too. Which again, I mean, I've heard from my sources, Collins is the weakest. So that's another where I think he would endorse this guy who's been super MAGA, go against the best instincts. Like, I'm not saying Dooley is lighting the world on fire as a candidate, but the Kemp stuff, exactly. Whereas I think that if it were Carter versus Collins, he probably doesn't want to alienate another House vote, but I'm still not completely certain of, Trump is just Trump is being back to his Trumpy Trump.
It goes
Trump
back.
self.
I was going to say, we started, you weren't on yet, we started on Texas, just talking. Chuck and I both tweeted like literally within 5 minutes of each other that if you ever needed proof that Donald Trump cares much more about Donald Trump than the Republican Party, endorsing Ken Paxton over John Cornyn is, exhibit A. And then if he would endorse Collins, if it was Collins and Dooley, that's the exact same.
Yep.
It's like, I'm going to endorse the people who are going to be for me or have been for me, not the person who gives the party the best chance of winning.
And tying it back to McConnell, who, when the history books are written, will have done more for the Republican Party cause. When you look at judges and different things, it will have been Mitch McConnell than Donald Trump.
Before we let you go, Jessica, Georgia Gov. We certainly expect one runoff.
Yeah.
Keisha Lance Bottoms, does she avoid a runoff or not?
I don't think she does. I think she's, I think my prediction, I think it might be her and Estevez. So, which could get really interesting. Yeah. Jason Estevez, former state senator. He has a real impressive story. I'll be interested to see if you see some Dem groups getting behind him to stop Bottoms in that instance. So
that's been my question, was that Bottoms with her Atlanta tenure, obviously just seems like there's a lot there for Republicans to go after. Yeah. And yet, obviously, so much of the oxygen in this race has been swallowed up by the Republican side. Right.
Yeah, when you can't get an ad on Edgewise.
You can't buy an ad,
Yeah.
Because Rick Jackson's bought them all.
Well, the only thing I wonder about here is, and we saw a little bit of a surge in Louisiana on Saturday among African-American voters, right? That there's angry African-American voters in the South in particular. And look, it's early, but it's all since all these states have decided to redistrict. And this is what I want to watch tonight, right? Does Booker do even better than we think in Kentucky? Does Keisha Lance Bottoms do better than we think because Atlanta African-Americans turn out in a bigger number? It's my thesis as to why I think Alabama governor may end up being more competitive than people realize in the general election.
Thurman and Estevez can get part of that black vote too, though. So that's another question too.
Yeah. Right. Just does a name that the casual political person who watches cable TV, former Republican Lieutenant Governor Jeff Dunk, does he have any chance in the
I mean, he spells his name a great way. I approve.
Jeffrey, great spelling. Yes,
you like the G. Jeffries. You and the Toys R Us guy, right?
That's right. Jeffrey the giraffe.
My favorite store.
Does he have any runoff chance, or did that never get going? I'm always fascinated by the principal party switch. Yeah.
But I heard even that, if you're an independent voter, which one do you vote in? I think some of them are perhaps going to vote, might be voting in the Republican primary too for Jackson. So, yeah.
That would be his vote. Yeah.
That's his vote. Okay, cool. Exactly. Yeah. Or for Raffensperger, maybe more for Raffensperger than Jackson, really. So
because we're not going to stay on to call Oregon, we're not going to stay on until the Oregon call. But I do have a really good friend of mine who's managing one of those Republican gubernatorial races. Oregon Gov, it's going to be sneaky close, isn't it? In November, Tina Kotek is polarizing. Polarizing incumbent, right?
Yeah. But is it Chris Dudley? Actually.
Chris Dudley or Christine Drazen.
I've been very curious
about
this. Is it Christine Drazen? Is it Chris Dudley? Or is it Ed Deal, the state rep?
Right.
Who's kind of in the mix a little bit. It's interesting because two of them have lost previously.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Close races, but they've lost.
Yes. Oh, well, Dudley famously close. Incredibly close in 2010.
Yeah, I will still be up for.
Guy couldn't hit his free throws as a pro. Couldn't hit his free throws.
That's true. Oh my God, he was a terrible free throw shooter.
That's why you lose races by a couple of points. Yeah, sorry.
If we're going by Derek Dooley's football, then he always lost our games in the fourth quarter or in overtime. So
so a runoff loss for him would be par for the course, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Jessica being a Tennessee person. Oh man.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's too funny.
It is.
The sports connections is beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yep. It is. Well, Jessica, we'll let you go. We appreciate it. Great to see you.
All right. Bye.
And I think we go from one Cook reporter right to another one. I believe Erin is in there. She is.
And I've brought up Kentucky's fourth.
Let's get it back. All right. Let's talk some house races here.
All right. Hey, guys.
All right, Aaron. Well, look, we're not calling anything until 7 p.m. because that's when all polls, that is what respectable and reputable organizations do. But look, this is coming in. I mean, there's not been a good sign for Massie, put it that way.
Yeah, look, I think a couple of weeks ago, honestly, the conventional wisdom was still that he might have the edge. There's been very little quality polling of this primary. And of course, it's tough to poll primary electorates to begin with. So I've been mostly kind of tracking the spending, which has been fairly even. I think a good sign that Massie was starting to get really concerned was that he pivoted to airing these ads talking about all the issues that he agrees with Trump on, after kind of initially embracing the, I am a principled libertarian, me. Sometimes I go against the National Party because I fight for you and because I care about conservative principles. But I think the tone of his ads definitely have sounded increasingly defensive.
Did Rand Paul ever actually do real campaigning for Massie or not?
I don't actually know that. I mean, there's definitely Massie, they have a whole kind of base of these liberty Republicans in this part of Kentucky. Massie's endorsed a couple of challengers who have ousted state legislators in recent years. So there's definitely a real libertarian wing in this region of the state that I don't want to discount. But I don't know about how involved Rand Paul was in his first race.
Right. That's what I mean. Well, look, we now know famously Rand Paul's son was a big Massie fan.
Yes.
Yeah. Everybody at a DC bar found out that he was a big fan of Thomas Massie.
Yep.
That didn't go over so well. But it is one of those, it is just, look, the whole Kentucky Republican scene is fascinating to me because of how there's this collection of sort of Trump skeptics. Thomas Massie, Rand Paul, Mitch McConnell, all in their different ways. They're kind of not 100% on board with Trump, yet nobody would mistaken them for somehow centrists.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kentucky's always had a strong libertarian independent streak, and you've seen quite a range of Republicans do well here. I think Massie's certainly a different type of, no one's mistaking him for being a moderate.
Right.
And I think that, has given him a lot of credibility with Republican primary voters who do still vote for Trump and like Trump. I mean, Trump won this district by more than 30 points, but, people are willing to kind of hold both of those things in tension. And up until now, Massie has never really faced a well-funded challenge.
No.
And so that is really what made the big difference, both from the Trump operation and then also from the pro-Israel lobby, which has spent millions of dollars on this race as well.
Let's move to Georgia.
That's worth noting. It is worth noting that, I mean, there's basically been three groups that have funded most of the anti-Massie spending, and 2/3 of that, or roughly, has come from the Republican Jewish Coalition and AIPAC's Super PAC, and then even the group that led the way in terms of spending is MAGA KY. I think actually a fair amount of their money actually came from some of the same donors.
I think that's correct.
So that's certainly been a big part of it, which is interesting. Obviously, Massie's problems go back to him opposing One Big Beautiful Bill. That's when I think this really started to ramp up. I mean, Trump already didn't like Massie, and then I think things started to really ramp up toward a primary, a primary challenger who would have Trump's endorsement. And then after that, you get the Epstein files and Massie trying to basically, being one of the leaders of a bipartisan effort to get a discharge petition to move that forward. And then to cap it off, he's opposed the conflict with Iran. He's been critical of that. He's been critical of the relationship with Israel, all this stuff. And he's down here early. We got 5% of the vote in, not a lot.
But I would argue most of the money has come from, I think, the pro-Israel side of things. Most
100%.
Absolutely.
Anti-Massie money. And I'm just curious, can we really say this was an effective campaign by the AIPAC forces here, or do they just sort of they just happen to be with Trump on this one?
I think it's going to be hard to separate that. It's also, this district has 4 different media markets. It is not an efficient way to spend your money. And they've spent over $30 million has been spent on this race. It's now become the most expensive primary in U.S. history, which is wild. So, I think it will be difficult to parse the distinctions there. I mean, I do think, taking out an incumbent is tough at the end of the day, even if Trump is endorsing a challenger. I mean, I think about Bob Goode's race. He only barely lost to John McGuire, who was endorsed by Trump and also had a pretty heavy spending advantage. And Trump has been successful in taking out, obviously, the folks who voted to impeach him and to convict him. But in the other primaries, I think it's been more of a mixed record, like against Brian Kemp and Nancy Mace in 22.
Let's shift. Let's stay in your bailiwick here. Georgia, these House primaries. What's fascinating, we have all these open seats in Georgia for a variety of reasons, of retirement or two, I think a death. We also have a couple of people running for statewide office, and none of them are going to be competitive in November, right?
That is correct. Yeah, we've got 3 open, safe Republican seats, 1 vacant, safe Democratic seat. That one was going to be interesting initially before David Scott passed. And so now,
yeah, that'd have been an interesting primary, sort of
yes,
the young versus old, right? That we were seeing develop in other states.
Yes, and now obviously that is no longer the theme of the primary. Now I think it's the question of whether or not Jasmine Clark, the state rep there, who has gotten a lot of money from the crypto industry, whether or not she avoids a runoff. But that primary has gotten a lot less interesting. In 2 of the 3 open seats, Trump has endorsed candidates who kind of have the full weight of the Republican Party behind them. Jack Kingston is running in, and I'm going to miss this up.
Jim Kingston.
Jim Kingston, the son of
Jack. Know why you did it.
Jack's son. I heard that. I'm going, wait a minute.
Jack's dad.
You're not telling me Jack Kingston's running.
No, but what's funny is that I was looking through some spending stuff for that race, just in terms of the outside spending coming in for him. And there's some group that is like a defend American Jobs. I think it's part of the Fair Shake, like crypto network.
The crypto one, yeah.
Super PACs. They were listing everything as spending for Jack Kingston. They listed Jack Kingston's like candidate ID and all this stuff. And I was just like, amazing.
That's so funny. Glad I'm not the only one. Yes, it's Jim, his son. Anyway, he's going to win that primary. So that's not particularly interesting. That's the 1st district, which is held by Buddy Carter. And then the 10th district held by Mike Collins. That one's going to go to House and Gaines, who's a state rep there. He's been backed by Trump, doesn't face much competition. The only one that's kind of interesting is the 11th district held by Barry Loudermilk. That's kind of a 3-way race between Loudermilk's former chief of staff, a public service commissioner, and this Dr. Josh Cowan, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, who previously had run in the Marjorie Taylor Greene district next door.
Lost her in a runoff.
Yeah. So that is kind of a bit of an open question. Trump has not endorsed there. So, of course, the primary has turned into a race of who has been the least loyal to Trump over the past 10 years.
Outside of the Kentucky 4 primary, that obviously that's a big, has some national implications. I'm guessing you're more interested in what's happening in Pennsylvania.
That's correct. Yeah. PA3 and PA7 are the really interesting House primaries. I mean, PA3, that's Dwight Evans' district. It is the single bluest district according to our PBI. It's got D+40. And that one, I think State Rep Chris Rabb, who is the progressive DSA member in the race, he looks pretty strongly favored to win at this point.
This would be an addition to the unofficial squad, wouldn't it? If you got a DSA.
Yes, very much so. And he had, initially it was a lot more competitive, but the other 2 more centrist candidates have failed to take off. You had Dr. Ala Stanford, who was endorsed by Evans, but her campaign kind of imploded a couple of weeks ago due to various missteps. And then you had Sharif Street, who was, of course, the former state party chair.
What's the relation to John Street?
Son.
The son.
So another Nepo baby here.
Okay.
He has also kind of struggled to pick up steam, even though he kind of has a lot of the Philly machine
By the way,
Dwight Evans behind him. Yeah.
Dwight Evans has been in Pennsylvania politics for my entire professional career. He was running for either mayor, senate, governor. He's always been floated as something over the years. Ended up anyway. It's just interesting to see him, finally bow out there. But anyway, and he was also a terrific right fielder for the Boston Red Sox. Oh, sorry, wrong guy.
Different Dwight Evans.
That joke is only landing with John Reese tonight. Behind the scenes.
No, that landed for me. I read about the Carlton Fisk World Series.
Thank you. I'm glad you read about it. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
There's been which primary had where Josh Shapiro got very active in these House primaries?
So he is not really active in PA3, though he doesn't want Rabb to be the nominee, but has not endorsed either Stanford or Straight. But there's been reporting that he has been trying to maneuver behind the scenes to make sure Rabb isn't the nominee.
Rabb.
Yeah.
Well,
the other one, though, is PA7, which obviously this is one of the swingiest districts in the country. Ryan McKenzie won this race by like a point in 2024. So if I think this is
Susan
one of the
Wild,
first seats to flipped.
Yeah, he beat Susan Wild in the seat.
He beat Susan
very
Wild,
50-50. Yeah.
Very 50-50. Democratic primary was competitive, but Bob Brooks, former firefighter union president, had really established a clear lead because he had both Shapiro and Bernie Sanders behind him.
I was just going to say that was I'm trying to think of a better endorsement pairing.
What a range of ideological
yeah.
I don't get that very often.
It is really interesting. And there's a couple of these cases actually this cycle where you have a candidate who is endorsed by both the Congressional Progressive Caucus and the Blue Dog Caucus. So if they get to Congress, would they join both? I don't know. And I don't think there is a precedent for that. When I did a quick search, I couldn't find anyone. So we have some interesting scrambling of the traditional kind of ideological divide in the Democratic primary.
Yeah. So what's happening with Alabama tonight? We're just punting the House primaries?
Yes. Well, we're punting 4 of the House primaries, the 1st, 2nd, 6th, and 7th districts. Those are the ones that are affected by.
I'm sorry. I'm going to put a pin in this. This idea that we just we're not going to hold these, but we're going to hold these. We're doing a remap, and too bad for those of you that might accidentally be in one and not the other, or not. I mean, that just seems ridiculously asinine and unfair to the voters. But
yeah, it's
anyway,
created a
that's
huge
Chuck Todd editorial. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, you have in both Louisiana and Alabama early votes that were cast before these lines.
We're throwing away votes.
That were essentially, yeah,
we're just throwing them away.
Yeah, it's obviously quite bad for voters. And those 4 districts will now have their primaries in August on the 11th. But the map itself is also still in a little bit of legal limbo. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it would be wild if they end up using the old map, but having pushed that primary back for 4 districts.
And we're going to give everybody Oregon love now because as I've said, some of us would like to get our beauty sleep. People like me need a lot of beauty sleep in order to not look this ugly. So let me ask you, Aaron, and Oregon's been home to quite a few competitive races over the last. This has been a much more competitive state in congressional races over the last few cycles. What are you looking for out there tonight?
Really nothing. I mean, it was competitive in 2022. A lot of that was due to statewide environments and the fact that the governor was quite unpopular. But and in 2024, Democrats ousted Lori Chavez DeRemer, the Republican who represented a swing seat in Oregon. But
and then she joined the cabinet and things got even more interesting. And
that didn't go well
for her.
Yeah, her story didn't end well.
Yeah. That's a rough Wikipedia page. Anyway.
No, it's not good.
Anyway, so that was a close race in 2024, but this is a seat that Harris won by 7 or 8 points. So we have that one in likely D. I don't think that's going to be competitive.
So you're not viewing anything in Oregon as competitive come.
No, unfortunately for them. I get a lot of calls from Oregon reporters who are like, is anything interesting happening this cycle?
And then we'll end with where we began in the state of Kentucky, but instead of talking Kentucky 4, let's talk Kentucky 6. How competitive
Kentucky
will it be?
6. Yeah, this is an open seat held by Andy Barr. It's a seat Trump won by about 15 points. So it's kind of right on the edge of potentially competitive districts. We'll see how the primaries shape up. Trump endorsed State Senator Ralph Alvarado, who was formerly Matt Bevin's running mate. And so Democrats think they have a potential line of attack there. And then the Democratic primary is a pretty competitive race between former state rep Sherilyn Stevenson and former DOJ prosecutor Zach Dembo. Republicans I've talked to think Dembo would be the slightly stronger opponent just because he doesn't have a record. He's a veteran, kind of has a profile that might appeal to more swing voters. But I think this is definitely a seat that could come on the board. At this point, I haven't really seen any general election polling, so I don't have a good sense of what Trump's approval rating in the district is like, but I assume it has dropped off like it has everywhere.
How have you guys adjusted your range with the latest Southern remaps? The range for Democrats right now.
Look, I think the most likely outcome is that Republicans net another maybe 5-6 seats due to redistricting, taking in the fact that a lot of these redrawn seats are still quite competitive. So, given that, maybe Republicans then have a 8-seat cushion effectively in the House, which is still not enough to protect them from losing the majority in a typical midterm environment. We still think Democrats are favored to win the House, though they're not the overwhelming favorites in the way that they were prior to this.
All right. Aaron, we should let you go. We know you're doing lots of stuff tonight, so thank you. Great to talk
Thank
to you.
you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Mr. Skelly, you seeing anything in Kentucky 4 that's telling you this is not trending in the direction we think it's trending?
Let me bring that back up.
And while you do that, let's bring in Logan Phillips from Race to the White House.
Yes.
Hello, Mr. Phillips.
Hey,
good to see you.
Great to see you too.
Happy. Sorry, it's our biggest primary night yet. We think multi-state primary night. We're excited.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, the move towards Paxton with Trump's endorsement, that means that he is likely going to win, has taken a little of some of the suspense out. But yeah, you never know, right? Some of those polls, even for that race, showed even with Trump's endorsement, Paxton wasn't winning necessarily by that much. So can't count Cornyn out there.
We are still waiting here, and I've noticed that the count's narrowed a bit there, Mr. Skelly. Is that just randomness of what's coming in?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we've got some more vote from Lewis County. This is Massie's home base. He was a judge here before he got elected to Congress. Also next door. I mean, there are not a lot of votes there. I think the biggest problem for him is that if Massie's going to win, he probably needs to do better in these where a lot of the vote is in these suburban. This is like suburban Cincinnati. Cincinnati's right here, and this is across the river, across the Ohio, in Kentucky. And those are places where, and we don't have votes reported yet from Boone or Campbell, but we do have some from Kenton. And if the other two look kind of like that, I think that probably would not be a great sign for Massie.
Yeah, I think the other really interesting race out there, where you have someone that is opposing Trump's nominee that has potential to win, is this Georgia governor primary, where Rick Jackson just came out of nowhere. I think everyone watching that race expected that the lieutenant governor was just going to completely clean up in that primary. He was dominating all of the polls. And the difference between Jackson and Massie, and this is where people like this can win sometimes, is he's not getting the full-blown firepower of the Trump administration and their allies to target him. So he potentially has a chance to win. He is a businessman that grew up poor, that is making an argument that kind of...
Yeah, I think it's a good story. Yeah. What's his argument? Go ahead.
Yeah, his argument is that you can't trust career politicians. They don't get anything done. Like Donald Trump, I'm going to be a unique voice here and actually be able to execute. And frankly, Georgia Republicans have had a history of saying, while we like the president a lot, we'll take your advice seriously, but we're going to make our own decisions here.
Yeah.
Also, the other thing I would say, just to add, by the way, is, Rick Jackson has not pissed off Donald Trump in the way that Thomas Massie has, right? Like Rick Jackson, he is not the Burt Jones. He's not the endorsed candidate, but he also hasn't done things to poke Donald Trump in the eye. I don't know that was ever Thomas Massie's goal. I think Thomas Massie and Donald Trump just don't necessarily see eye to eye. There are different versions of the Republican Party, but I think Massie is aware that what he was doing could end up the way this may well end up. Do you know what I mean? I don't think he would be stunned that he finds himself in this place. I don't know. Do you think that that's right, Chuck? Do you think Massie was taken by surprise? Trump, they tried to kind of primary him in 2024.
No, I don't. I was just going to say he's kind of been iconoclastic, and that's probably a generous term. Ever since he's been in there, right? If I'm wrong,
Mr. No, he'd be like the one no vote, 430 to 1.
Right,
he's the one no vote.
Right. He's like the new Ron Paul, right? Who would always vote against everything in the House. Isn't Massie the one that had his family pose with AK-47s or AR-15s? Excuse me.
Definitely could be.
Didn't he have the Christmas card? I think he had the Christmas card where everybody was holding their AR-15.
I remember that Christmas card. I can't remember who it was. I've heard a lot of stories
pretty
about
sure that was Massie's
raw
Christmas
milk in Tom Massie.
Yeah,
unpasteurized milk.
We all know what the coverage of this is going to be. It's going to be, this is a lesson to anyone else that stands up to Donald Trump. But I think to some degree, you have to decide if you're a member of Congress what your goal is to be. Yeah. There are many, many members of the 435 that will have long careers where they don't really achieve much of anything. Nobody outside of their district will know their name. They'll have very minimal impact on policy. honestly, we might as well do something with the power. And in his case, he's going to be remembered in history. He's going to be in the textbooks, and he can say he's left his mark. And maybe that's, he doesn't get to be flying up to Washington for the next 30 years, but I don't think that's nothing.
Look, I'll be honest. The most damning part of of Trump's obsession with getting rid of Massie is that he didn't really get engaged in this. He didn't get mad that Massie was anti-Israel. He didn't get mad that Massie was that anti-war. He got mad that Massie worked with the Democrats to get the Epstein files out.
That's it. And that was the trigger. Yeah. Oh, hey,
100%.
Lauren has the Christmas card because he's like the super producer of the world. Lauren, can we pop?
There it is.
There it is.
There it is. I know. I remember. And
it looks like AI, but it's
by
not
the way,
AI.
This was when the left hated Massie.
Yep.
Like, it is sort of funny how, our left-right paradigms go these days. Right now, I think the left is like, let's go Massie. Woohoo.
Totally.
Love us some Massie.
Yep.
I'm old enough to remember when. I'm just saying.
Totally. Yeah. This was MSNBC fodder for like a month. Look at this picture. Great
These
job,
guys are out of their minds.
Yeah.
There was some reply to something I think I had tweeted out, or we tweeted out from the Decision Desk HQ account about the Massie race, and someone was like, "Yeah, I'm like with the Green Party, but I like Massie." I'm like, "What?" It's just amazing, I mean,
Hey,
but you know what?
Strange
Massie
bedfellows.
Ro Khanna is an interesting. It's been an interesting pairing, and if Massie is an ex member of Congress, come post November, is he a national co-chair of the Ro Khanna for president campaign?
Could be interesting.
No.
Is Massie a candidate for president himself for the Libertarian Party nomination?
Yeah, that I think is more possible.
That's interesting because he'll be a notable figure. I mean, it'd be
Right.
kind of like Justin Amat. I mean,
Or Gary Johnson. I mean, this is the way. This is
He's
kind
no
of the way
less
the
credible than
Libertarians.
Gary Johnson.
Exactly, and he will know Aleppo.
I also think
Go ahead.
the other interesting question here is, are we going to start to see way more discharge petitions in the future, which, Massie would be a sure part of that potential change. That has definitely had an impact with this Congress, but you have a Republican-controlled Senate, so the degree that it can have an impact is limited. But if you have a future where you have a Democratic-controlled Senate and a Republican-controlled House, which inevitably will happen at some point in the future, or vice versa, this is like the other check, right? The Speaker's unwillingness to bring anything to the floor that doesn't have 90+% of the party on board. That and the filibuster are the things that stop common sense stuff to sometimes get through that most Americans.
Hey, I am working with a group of people who are trying to find a way to advocate lowering the threshold for discharge petitions from 218 to a minimum 50 signatures from each party. And then it gets
That's interesting.
and there is a lot of members of Congress who are kind of intrigued by that. And this is mainly coming from those from sort of third party or sort of center left, center right, who are very fearful that the partisanship control of the House has also been ideological control of the House.
Yes,
right. That they go one in the same. And if you're sort of and I wonder if there starts to be a little bit more support for. There, but for the grace of God go I when it comes to a discharge petition. Maybe I do want a lower threshold because maybe there's one of my bills I want to get on the floor.
It would take at least some of the power away. I mean, one thing that we've seen in the last 25 years in the House is, even in the Senate too, is the leadership now controls everything. It used to be, if you were the chair of the Appropriations Committee,
committee chairs were powerful people.
There used to be like 15 people who had real power. Now there's like 3. And it is different. Can I just do one quick thing? This is from Scott Tranter, DDHQ, Boiler Room Genius. Just as a little bit of a counterweight on Kentucky 4, he says, Massie flips Mason County with election day votes. It appears he's doing better here, and Lewis County election day vote also supports that. That would give him a chance to hold on. So just, before we do somebody on the my YouTube chat was like, Massie already lost. Kalshi called it. And I'm like, number one, Kalshi doesn't call races. Number two, just right now, as I look at the clock, is at 7 p.m. Eastern time, where all polls are now closed in Kentucky. So let's just hold our horses just a teeny bit.
Yeah. The fun thing with Kalshi and people talking about that is that they do get it right a lot of times, but then they just get it plain wrong, which is like what happened with the Democratic primary for Senate in Illinois. So, it was like Krishnamurthy, 90%, 95%. And then, he did not win. And I think it's just, it's a mixed bag. So I would not go by.
Jeffrey, I'm seeing the same thing in sports too. I just think humans are fundamentally really bad with probability. The way I do ratings on my site is I have anything like below a 25% chance as like lean, right? Which is like a little bit of strong language. I understand that, but people are going to just assume that the race is safe if I don't do that, because I just get tons of emails every time I don't, right? So I think humans just, when they think that something is likely to happen, the ability to understand the distinction between a 30% chance, 20% chance, 10% chance, 5% chance, we're just not wired that way. If you've been following the NBA at all, I'm a huge Knicks fan. Like the chance they gave the Celtics of winning the Eastern Conference just because they had a good game or two, and the Knicks had a bad game or two, and Detroit had some bad games, it like shot up to 70% almost, and they didn't even make it out of the round.
I meant to look to see what the Wemby performance last night felt like a moment, and it felt like a change in the NBA. We just saw it right here. And my son, who will claim more NBA knowledge than my own, he's a fanatic. He's like, Thunder is still going to win this 4-2. And he may be right, but I am curious what the impact on. I meant to look to see what the odds of the Spurs winning the title. You can get the Thunder for
better odds today than you could yesterday.
That's right.
No question.
And I would be all over that.
We are a very recency biased society. Like whatever, it's like there's one county with 20 votes in it where Gallrein is winning, and people are like, it's over, Gallrein. You know what I mean? Right. It's like, let's just,
guys, I have another question for you. Something, a theory I've been kind of playing with in my mind here, and maybe tonight's not the best test of it, but we're seeing examples in these primaries so far. I'm starting to wonder if Democrats are having a fundamental shift in the way that they think when they go to vote in primaries. I think before, Democrats were going for the Goldilocks candidate most of the time, someone maybe like Mallory McMorrow. It would be a combination of the person that has the best chance to win that also really fits your values.
The Joe Biden. Joe Biden in 2020.
The Joe Biden mindset. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if we're seeing a switch, which is because Democrats, well, they think Republicans are the central problem. They think the secondary problem is the Democratic Party itself, and they're not able to.
What's your evidence? I mean, I don't I don't disagree that we might be seeing that. I just don't know if we've had enough instances yet.
Right now, it's more primary polling. I think the Michigan race is a potential example.
I guess I'm not right. Look, we got 2 more months of that race, and they haven't dropped the anvil on Abdul El-Sayed yet, and I think the anvil's coming.
Although, Chuck, just to play devil's advocate slightly on that is like, and I'm not saying it's a direct comparison, but I do remember, and I know this happened to you, and I'm sure it happened to Jeffrey too. Like, I had Democrats who were pro Janet Mills be like, just wait until she gets into the race.
You're right.
And we were going to drop the opposition research hammer.
By the way,
and they
have.
And they did.
And it just
didn't work. Now, I'm not saying Mallory McMorrow or Haley Stevens or Janet Mills and Syed is Plattner. I think it's a more of a mixed bag. I think we always do want to see like hard and fast trend.
So
it's true, but in North Carolina, Roy Cooper is old and has been in office forever, and he's walking to the Senate seat.
Right.
Because for Janet Mills, it didn't work.
Well, by the way, though, the establishment trying to line up behind Josh Turek in Iowa over Zach Walz, that does appear to be working, right?
Yes, it does.
So anyway, I'm not trying to. I think you're onto something, Logan. I just don't know if we have enough evidence to say definitively.
I agree with you, Chuck. I'm not that confident in this theory. It's just one that I think could be explaining where things are going. And 100% it's going to be a mixed bag, right? In Maine, that's what's happening. But I also think in the Josh Turek case, right, this is someone that's still new to most people, that has a really compelling and unique story.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that everyone that's an elite in the Democratic Party is done. I think it's more the new characters that are seen as establishment and elite might be in trouble. People trust Roy Cooper. Look at the Illinois race, right? It's not a perfect match for this theory, but there's something there. Raja really came across as just a classic Democratic politician.
He ran a terrible race. I mean, his messaging was he ran a race that fit 2018. He ran a 2018 primary campaign.
Or earlier. I was going to say like 2006, but yes.
Yeah, but he was
I have a lot of money. I have a lot of endorsements. Vote for me.
Right.
Like very process heavy, which I think reminds people of what they don't like, which is he's a politician.
And I think that those in the establishment that win are those that have figured out how to behave differently. Don't you agree, Logan?
Yeah, and I actually don't even think this is, in theory, from the voters' perspective, a left versus center thing. They just want change makers that are going to do something new and offer some really promising big solutions. And so I think centrist candidates have to start considering what are the big changes they want to make. I know that doesn't always go together necessarily, but that's the reason why the progressives have been able to take advantage of this.
If I were a centrist candidate running, somebody trying to run in the center left lane there a little bit, I'd just be pounding on corruption. Because that's something everybody agrees with. And I would just be promising, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this.
And there's a lot of ammo, Chuck.
And there's so much more ammo than ever. I mean, that's what I'd be doing. Like, you'd be sitting there going, we're going to bring down we're going to lower the price of food by simply getting rid of these tariffs. We're going to stop this, aggressive deportation crisis that is raising the cost of food, right? I think you can thread a needle and then channel the anger of the left through corruption. I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great option. I think that in general, though, you just need to have a bold plan that's going to sound like you're going to change the status quo and that you're not just a regular Democrat right now.
Hey, Jeffrey, can you just update us on where I see we're a fifth of the vote is in. Can you anything interesting that jumps out to you? Because I do think most people tuning into this right now are like, is Thomas Massie going to win?
Is it over? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it has not been projected. I think if we're continuing to look for sort of signs about how the race is going, I mentioned earlier that these three counties across here that are just below Cincinnati are sort of the three main suburban counties. A lot of the vote is going to be here. And, so far we've got some votes in, roughly a third from both the 4th district, the Kent County and Boone County. What am I reading? Only a third, roughly the vote is in from each of those counties, but Gallrein's ahead in both of them. And so that,
and that's where the majority of people live in that district, right?
Jeffrey? Well, it's where a substantial chunk. Yeah. I mean, because look, you're talking about 7, 22, 36, 41. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're talking about a little over half the vote. I think the expected vote in this district being in those three counties. So yeah.
And just for people who are tuning in, I'm using my mouse that no one can see. The eastern part of the state is where Massie is from.
Not eastern part of the district.
Eastern part of the district, excuse me. Eastern part of the district. Thank you, Chuck. Jeffrey, is that right?
Sorry. I
was just saying the eastern part of this district is where Massie is from, and it presumably
this right here, the one county he is very clearly winning by a substantial margin, and there's not a lot of vote there, which is a challenge for him. But yeah, you would expect him to do better in this part. But a lot of votes are here, and he needs. There needs to be some more pink or red on this map.
Yes, right.
Logan, you're intrigued on Georgia, which we have runoffs. How about the Senate primary? How are you watching that?
I think Collins is looking like he's in a really good position, although a lot less than the last 2 weeks. There was a chance, I thought, in my personal primary forecast, I had him around 46% like 2 weeks ago, but Dooley has been rising in the polls quite a bit lately. And I think, for those that don't know, Derek Dooley is a football coach that I think he was roommates with Brian Kemp's little or older brother back in college, and he handpicked him to run. I think Kemp saw where this midterms was likely headed way in advance and thought that this was going to be a tough year for anyone that had a voting record in the House, and so they needed to get someone new to run that could have independent stances on things, especially when it comes to healthcare, which is what Keisha Lance Bottoms, I would say, very likely nominee for Democrats, former Atlanta mayor, is going to be running on. So he now seems to have a pretty good shot of making that runoff. And while I think Collins, based off the current polling, will start out as favored in that, I definitely want to count Dooley out. So we'll probably have a competitive, at least somewhat competitive round 2 between those two.
Yeah.
I've brought up that average just for folks to see our decision desk polling average. A lot of undecideds, it's like a third.
But Dooley just pulling ahead there. That was very recent, right?
Dooley has not moved.
And the last couple polls,
he didn't move for months.
Right. Yes. The last couple polls have moved Dooley into. I mean, look, they're running about even, but if you're sort of thinking about it as we don't have a ton of data, and the last couple polls did show Dooley doing notably better, that might be an indication of surging and maybe if we had
and
a
this
little
is
more
simply the
information, he'd be
Kemp.
doing better.
This is the Kemp and like
Yeah,
Brian
he's in
Kemp
the
let
ad.
people know
like
that he's for
2.5,
Dooley.
4 million something.
He's
dollars.
in the ad saying like Derek Dooley's a good guy. Yeah, I mean, it does show though that this is the primary where I always have to check like 4 times to make sure I didn't miss that Donald Trump endorsed Mike Collins. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it seems now he may wind up doing
too.
it if it's a runoff, but it's like Mike Collins is like so performatively going for that endorsement that it's weird that Trump hasn't gotten involved, because if we had the list, who's the most endangered Democratic incumbent in the Senate? We can debate whether John Ossoff will win or lose, but he's clearly the most endangered incumbent in the Senate, Democrat.
Yeah, so but I really think he couldn't be in a possibly stronger position given the state that he's in. I mean, he's outraised 80 million. I think his opponents have raised like less than 10 combined. He won in a much redder Georgia in probably what's going to be a considerably redder year. Now, you could say he lost by 1 if we want to use what happened in the first round. Okay, still translating how much Georgia has shifted, that he's not against a guy who was really, I thought, like a pretty competitive, strong incumbent in Purdue.
Yep. And I'll give you another point here, Logan, that I think benefits Ossoff that I thought was not going to benefit Ossoff, and that's the black vote.
Yeah.
Running with Warnock, that was gold.
Huge.
Running in a presidential, that was gold. I have been concerned about that for him in this cycle. And then now the attack on the Voting Rights Act, the redrawing of all these maps, I think that's going to translate to a much higher than expected African-American turnout, particularly in these southern states. And that should be a bit of obviously should be a big help to Ossoff.
Yeah,
especially if there's an African-American nominee for governor.
Logan, I'm curious. What do you think about my take, which is basically that John Ossoff is actually a stronger Pete Buttigieg for 2028?
I don't know if he's stronger or not, but I do think I agree with the general perspective. Right?
He's had to appeal to black voters, which is a huge problem for Buttigieg.
Did you see Ossoff
has it right?
Ossoff had 0% of the black vote. He had a 0% of the black vote today. Pete Buttigieg, rather, 0%. I was like, that's not.
No, for what it's worth, I have a personal demographic polling average. I don't publish it because I don't want to keep it up because it takes me forever. But I had Pete around 3 or 4% up from 1 early. 3 or 4 is not going to win you the primary. I'm just saying he's starting to go. And I just think, in fairness to Pete, what we should say here is this guy was 28th or 27th least known of all 28 candidates last time. He was running against, Joe Biden, who gave black voters. He's going to have to do better with black voters, obviously, to win, but he hasn't had a chance really to do better because the primary hasn't started yet. So,
yeah, but somebody asked me this question today about both Bernie and Pete, and I said, look, here's what I'm going to be watching for Pete in the spring of 27. Barack Obama himself did not have a lot of good relationships with the key Southern black ministers in the South when he got elected in 2004. He spent a lot of time in 2005 and 2006 traveling and going almost monthly to different AMA churches in the South and to sort of get to know these folks. I've not seen Buttigieg do that. And to me, until I see him do more of that, then I am going to be skeptical whether he can do what it takes to get this
He can't be the nominee without that.
He's got to start, and you can't just show up the 2 weeks before the primary at an AME church and hope you're going to make some.
That's a great point, Chuck. And I would say, Jeffrey, I see a version of him where if he moves into the top 4 candidates, he could be the lightning in a bottle and win. Mm-hmm. I think he's one of the best speakers in the country. He has John Lewis as a mentor, which is a great part of the story when you're trying to win the black vote. He seems like a genuine anti-racist. The question is, how will he do on the campaign trail, right? Like David Axelrod, I quote him a lot, probably too much, but hey, he's a great mind in politics, says that the candidates that are the best are the ones who are able to learn the most once they're actually out there. That's often the person who ends up winning the primary.
Yeah. So true.
So we'll see if Ossoff can do it. How's he going to do in interviews? How's he going to do with talking to voters one-on-one? We know behind a podium he's dynamite.
Look, I think I will say this. I think Ossoff jumps up even a bit more on that list. If not only he wins, but he's able to essentially, because he's the big kahuna in the state Democratic Party right now. If he can essentially create a coordinated campaign effort that lifts Democrats up and down the ballot. Right. That brings the Georgia governor across the finish line.
If Keisha Lance Bottoms winds up winning,
I think that huge piece that will then totally flip. because I'll be honest, an Ossoff victory without a victory in the governor's race will say, well, Ossoff's a good candidate. But he also faced a weak field. Right.
Yeah.
I think if it's not a lonely victory, Ossoff becomes a lot more serious and a lot closer to the top tier in my opinion.
All right, Logan, we gotta let you go. Thank you as always for your brilliance.
This is great.
We
Thanks,
appreciate
Logan.
you, man. Thank you
That's
for spending time with us. All right, man. Hey, before we bring in our next,
we're going to go
guest,
to Alabama here for a minute or two.
Yeah,
but let's quickly flow through.
Yeah, let me do one quick one on Kentucky while Jeffrey's got it pulled up. This is from the DDHQ race projection team. Expect a Kentucky 4 call within the next 45 minutes. So that's right around 8 p.m. Eastern for people who are kind of wondering.
We're waiting for a couple more drops.
Yeah.
And as soon as they get them, confirmation, right? Skelly, a couple more election vote drops just to make sure. Because Massie did flip one county from early to election day vote, right?
Yes.
So
the election day vote is the
big
question. Is Massie actually going to be doing better in it? And if he is, this gets a lot more interesting.
Right.
So let's so for people who know, DDHQ projecting next 45-ish minutes, we'll have something on Kentucky 4. Before
By the way,
that, though, go ahead, Chuck.
We were talking NBA playoffs earlier. This is Jeffrey Skelly's flu game. Yeah.
I know. Jeffrey Skelly playing hurt, folks.
He's playing hurt
if it isn't clear, I have a cold.
Yeah. Jeffrey Skelly also has a young child, which I was sharing.
I'm living that 1-year-old kid.
It is they are the biggest germ factories, and they put their hands in your mouth. And
Yep.
Yeah, I don't miss those days. All right, we have not talked a lot about Alabama.
Yeah, they're pretty fun.
Another really important
I don't get sleep,
state.
but they're fun.
Yes. Ruth Servin Smith, AL.com. Let's bring her in. Hi, Ruth.
Hey, folks.
Ruth, we actually have a Charlottesville connection. I was there.
I know your name.
Yes, I know your name. And I was like, that's right. She was Charlottesville. And I was, anyway.
Are there signs around Charlottesville like, do not admit this man with a picture of Skelly on it?
Yeah, exactly.
Probably.
Ruth, let's talk. We have not talked about Alabama yet because we've been talking Kentucky and Georgia, but a name many people in Washington know, Tommy Tuberville. Actually, two names many people in Washington know, Tommy Tuberville and Doug Jones, right? Former senator and current senator. How much are people in the state paying attention? I mean, we assume both of them win easily, right? The primaries. What are people talking about it in the state, or is it just us nerds?
Yes and yes, I would say. Yes, it'll be a rematch of the 2020 race, which Tommy Tuberville won handily. Doug Jones, of course, had a pretty crazy special election when Roy Moore got kicked out of the ticket. I'm sorry, not kicked off the ticket, but had a scandal and ended up losing. And so there was a 2020 race. We are now setting up for a rematch of that race. I try not to do predictions. I'll leave that to you. But we are expecting to be able to call that race, really shortly after polls close at 7:00. And yes, people are talking about them. They both have name recognition. Obviously, two things that Alabama loves a lot to talk about are football and politics. These guys have both of those. Tommy Tuberville, of course, was the Auburn football coach and is well known around the state. Doug Jones has been a prosecutor for a long time and famously prosecuted the KKK bomber in Birmingham. And so, they are well known. It is that also is a little bit of a problem, though, for both of them, because if you're not interested in politics and everyone already has an opinion about you and people see it as a foregone conclusion in a state like Alabama, it can be challenging to get people out to vote.
All right. I got a couple questions for you. Number one, the Tommy Tuberville residency question.
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty clear by the way he caveats his answers that he kind of knows he probably doesn't qualify for the 7-year residency requirement, but that it's my understanding you don't have standing on this question until after the election. Is that the situation we're looking at here with Tommy?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, and
neither are we.
No. We pretend we are. So
there was an active court case about this that actually just got thrown out yesterday. You can find my byline.
Did it get thrown out for standing? Is that why it got thrown
For
out?
jurisdiction, lack
Yeah.
of jurisdiction.
That's what I thought.
So in Alabama, the courts really want the party to figure out who can qualify to be a candidate. Local judges do not want to be responsible
They
for
don't
that.
mess with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will say one issue with that court challenge, lawyers told me, is that it was brought by another candidate. There are people interested in finding voters who can challenge results of the primary. And so we are hearing that there could be other lawsuits filed. I asked Doug Jones if he himself plans to file a lawsuit. Today he said no. He wants, voters.
I wouldn't. If I were Doug Jones, I'd want to face.
it.
I want to face Tommy Tupperville with these questions hanging over his head.
I mean,
right?
it does seem like, just on my very basic scan of the law, that he doesn't meet the residency requirement. Now, is it possible that the people who are adjudicating this, if and when it eventually comes, are going to be more Tupperville friendly and it doesn't matter? Yes, but Jeffrey, you want to break in?
It's in the Constitution.
I know, Chuck.
Okay, I don't mean to
Sorry. He meets the
Hold on, we got to
residency
do something real quick.
requirements.
Hold on, Ruth.
We got to do some business, Ruth.
Sorry, we got to cut to Kentucky, where we have a projection.
Sure.
For U.S. Senate in Kentucky, Decision Desk HQ is projecting that Andy Barr will win the Republican primary and be the nominee in the general election. He's currently leading about 60% to 32% over Daniel Cameron, his main rival, for the nomination. And there's still a lot of vote outstanding, obviously, but it's just sort of the pattern of returns that we're getting here in the early going are almost all good for Barr. And it's really difficult to see how Cameron makes this up as things continue.
Yep.
Look, Andy Barr, I mean, I just think about his career. He kept running for House and running for House and running for House.
I think, Chuck.
Then he finally got there. And then it looked like there'd be this ceiling on him to be able to promote. I mean, he's sort of a grind. He's a political grinder. He's like Mike DeWine in Ohio. He's just ground away. And essentially he's just outlasted everybody.
And by the way, very quickly, Daniel Cameron, my gosh, I heard so much about Daniel Cameron as the big rising star of Republican politics. He has now lost 2 races in the space of 18 months, and who the hell knows what he does next. Anyway, not unexpected. Can we, Ruth, the governor's race, I think, is going to be interesting in the fall for us to talk about. I do think Tuberville and Jones probably win pretty easily, but we three above you here have all been talking redistricting a ton. Can you talk about where we are with Alabama? I know the current governor, Kay Ivey, said we're not going to do a special session. Then she was like, actually, we are gonna do that. Where does it stand, and how do we have a new map? I guess where is that headed?
This is a perfect question for a wonky show like yours, because you will understand what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So
wonky,
of course,
we take that as a compliment. But go ahead.
Wonky is the nicest thing anybody's ever
I have that
said
on
to
my
me.
back of my shirt.
Yeah.
Wonky.
Oh my gosh. Go ahead, Ruth.
So we have an unusual situation in Alabama today, Election Day. Of course, all 7 of our congressional seats are on the ballot, or kind of are up for election in November. But as of today, only 3 of those elections will stick tonight. So they are all on the ballot, but the results of 3 will be certified. The results of 4 will not be certified.
I just can't believe this. It is amazing that this is constitutional. I cannot believe it is.
Ruth, can you explain how that is justified?
How do they explain the legal? Right. How is it being explained as legally justifiable?
Right.
So there are multiple questions, which again may end up in court. But Republicans' justification in the special session last week was, number 1, we're the party in power. We get to draw the maps. We should have been able to do it in 2021. We are now we have the opportunity under Calais to fix what the courts didn't allow us to do the first time. So that's like the big picture justification. The second thing they're saying is that, we should be able to fix this as soon as possible. And yes, it's an election year. Yes, there is a state law that says you cannot change primaries in an election year, but we're not running afoul of that because this is a special primary. And
Oh, really?
so
Well,
that
this is a very special episode of Decision Desk HQ and
that
the
is
Chuck ToddCast.
amazing.
So anyway, yeah,
That
it's a
is
special
amazing.
primary. If you
Talk
say the
about
word
a-
special, okay.
Talk
got
about
it.
a pretzel. Okay, so Ruth, what do we? There are two, if I'm not mistaken, there are two majority-minority districts in Alabama, 7, correct?
correct.
Is the expectation one will stay,
So
or
if
none will
if
stay?
if Republicans go to the maps they want to use in the special election in August and the general in November, Alabama 7, which is Terry Sewell, will stay mostly the same and will essentially still be a majority-minority district. She is
Is
expected
that
to win
Montgomery?
re-election.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that-
Earl
No,
Hilliard's
that's
whole district.
Birmingham,
Oh,
Tuscaloosa,
it's-
kind of down
Yeah.
the western. Yeah.
Got
The
it. Okay.
western
Isn't that
side
our-
of the state. Mhm.
That's
Got
not
it.
Artur Davis, Earl Hilliard, or it is.
That is.
It is. It's that same.
Yeah,
district.
that was
The old-
that was for a long time the only majority black seat, and then the,
Okay.
the federal courts forced
a
the
second
state
one.
to use
Yeah.
a second.
Okay, so the second one is where then? Sorry, Ruth. Go
The
ahead.
second one is South Alabama, and that's currently held by Shamari Figures. Redistricting allowed him to take that seat in 2024 and essentially flip what was previously a Republican seat. Now they are interested in flipping that back. They have several strong Republican candidates lined up to run in basically a redrawn district in South
This
Alabama.
is this going to be Mobile through Montgomery? Is that what we're looking at, or
No,
what is it?
that's what makes this very confusing for voters. Is
Yes.
really, it would shift and be essentially like Dothan in the southeastern corner
Okay.
of Alabama. Yeah, there you go.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh.
Nice work.
Interesting.
Been working on it.
Yeah.
Got a lot of maps. I can bring it up.
Yeah.
Ruth, I'm
Okay,
very. I spent a lot of time
So
in
this is the
Pensacola,
new
which
map,
means I've
just
been to the
for
Buc-ee's on the
folks
way to
be clear. This
Mobile,
would be the new one.
and that's my reference point there. Is that Buc-ee's in the second? You know, that's what I'm trying to double.
That's where Bobby Bright is from down there, isn't he from Dothan? Like, isn't that like he? I just always remember him getting talked about and being a member and all. Like, it's a very. I mean, it's like a. I think it's one of those
Yeah.
like it used to be very democratic, and then
Well,
1994
yeah,
happened.
he was like mayor of Montgomery,
right,
which is
in the district.
partly in the seat. Yeah.
Right.
Skelly's got every map there is. Right. Okay. So I see the other district there. Okay. That makes sense. So we expect then there would be a 6-1 split, Ruth,
Right.
for
Here.
November.
Do the partisan lean. That makes it.
Yeah, there you go. So
it.
you can see that the second is still, could be considered a
Maybe
toss-up depending on
competitive.
who the candidate is.
And Ruth, because
Yeah.
our folks love to know where everybody is, you're working for AL.com. That's I believe an advanced media Newhouse site. Is that still the case?
Yes, correct.
Where are you based? Birmingham?
So my
or-
publication is statewide. I live in Birmingham in the center.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great place to live. Birmingham, Alabama, deeply underrated in my opinion.
You know,
You should come
go-
visit.
I went as a
Come-
kid. It was the
go to
Sloss
the-
furnaces.
I know Chuck
checked
is
them out.
always trying to flack
yeah.
for the Chuck is always trying
Oh.
to flack for the panhandle of Florida.
Well, I will,
He's
but
like,
here's
he's
the
like
bit.
the tourist
No.
czar.
And I'm sure Ruth. I'll give you this. I'm sure Ruth's done this. The best thing to do in Alabama is the Civil Rights Tour.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
I have not done that.
It is fantastic. There's a nice little sort of you can look it up on the website and give you a nice little. Basically, you create your own road trip, but
Oh,
you go
that's
through all the
cool.
different spots of all the civil rights.
You
I went
and
to
you
a-
have to go to
yeah.
the new AJI museum in Montgomery if you haven't
Yeah.
been. It's really great.
I do
See,
need
look
to do
at
that.
this.
And I will.
Next time we have Ruth on, she's gonna give us food recommendations of where to eat. That's really where I zone in. All right, Ruth, you're the best.
Yeah, but Alabama has that weird white barbecue sauce. I don't understand why Alabama. Well, this sort of
it's like
who
North
makes
Carolina and the vinegar.
Yeah, it's a strange brew.
Yeah.
Am I right, Ruth? Have you gotten used to that?
Not my favorite, but I'm
Yeah.
originally from Oklahoma, so they don't count my food opinions here.
So
Oh, wow.
does that make you a Boomer Sooner fan? Like, are you an OU fan or not?
Well,
I never know
I
how
went to
Oklahoma
Mizzou.
shakes out. Oh, you
I
went to
went to
Mizzou.
Mizzou.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So every
Interesting.
time a team joins the SEC, I only bring bad things to the SEC.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Chuck and I can identify with that. All right.
Ruth,
Ruth
Ruth-
Servan-Smith, AL.com. Go follow her on the internets and social media. Thank you,
And
Ruth.
like I said, we're bullish. We think Alabama Gov's going to be a very
I think that's a
competitive race.
Fascinating race.
I really do.
Thanks, Ruth.
A sleeper
Thanks,
race.
guys.
Bye, Ruth.
Skelly disappeared, but don't worry, he's coming back.
Well, it means we lost our map. We need to get our.
I know.
You
know what? Let me share. I'll get the
Yep.
votes map up. Hold on. Hey, Lauren, let me get that map up and share my screen. Go ahead, Chuck. Keep talking.
No. I think we have our next guest in the chat here, if I'm not mistaken. It's one Abby Turner of National Journal. Abby, hello,
hey, Abby.
Hello.
All right, we're just getting our vote boards back up here. When one of us goes that has the vote boards connected to the stream.
Okay, Lauren, I'm gonna. Sorry, Chuck. Lauren, I'm gonna share my screen here. Go ahead.
No worries. As we said earlier, we think we're waiting for another drop in about 10 minutes, and then we think we'll have some definitive answers on Kentucky 4 and the fate of Mr. Massie. But Abby, what are you watching tonight? What is your focal point? What are you refreshing like crazy?
I'm refreshing the Georgia gubernatorial primaries like crazy. I think these are both going to be super interesting. Right now, obviously, Republicans look like they're headed for a runoff. I think the test is if Keisha Lance Bottoms can get over that 50% threshold. I think what's interesting here is she got the coveted, some would say, Biden endorsement in this primary, his first endorsement post-presidency.
By the way, I've seen some Southern Democratic surveys and statewide surveys in the South, multiple states. Biden's favorable ratings very high with black voters in the South. That is a good endorsement to get in a Democratic primary. It may not be good for swing voters right now, but it's good for a Democratic primary voter.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays in a general election, but I think that could be the secret sauce. If she makes it over 50%, that might have been that final push. So, just pushed her over. But I think the race, if it goes...
That's a little feather in the cap of Mr. Biden, since everybody we all beat him up so much. I say we all literally, the entire political... Right, news world is Biden, and it's like I'm sure he'd be glad to know he's still got a little feather or two in his cap. But go ahead, Abby. Sorry.
Abby, I was just going to ask you about how Chuck and I think are relative. Chuck, I won't speak for you, but I think we're relatively bullish about Georgia for Democrats at the gubernatorial level, just because of the Ossoff and the dynamics of the state. But where do you, because Keisha Lance Bottoms, she is the former mayor of Atlanta. Obviously, we think she'd run well with the black community. But where do you, when you think about that race, this is obviously a state that has had Brian Kemp for the last 8 years. This is the first time in a while we will have a new candidate running on the Democratic side. When you think about that race, where does that fit into your kind of overall map of competitiveness?
Hotline ranked Georgia's governor race in our latest rendition of Power Rankings as the best chance for Democrats to flip a GOP governor seat. I think there's a lot of factors that go into this. The state never expanded Medicaid.
Wow, you have Georgia higher than Iowa. Oh.
Okay, this was a big topic of discussion.
That is a big debate.
This was probably the one that was the hardest to place the puzzle pieces. I think
Georgia versus Iowa. That's fair.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now off the top of my head, but I know Iowa was second for
and Nevada only doesn't make that top two because there's an incumbent involved.
Yeah, we had Arizona and Nevada next to each other the last two times. Arizona above Nevada.
Right.
I think in Georgia, state never expanded Medicaid. They're dealing with, I think, some rural hospital closures, threats of closures. These are all the things that people bring up to me. And when I say, what is different? Democrats have tried cycle after cycle to do this. Why is now different? And I think the Ossoff of it all is really going to help Democrats pull them across the finish line if they need it.
Yep.
I am less bullish, Chris, than I was 6 weeks ago. I got 2 words for you, Rick Jackson.
I think of billionaire. Rick Jackson, billionaire, 3 words.
Well, it's not just billionaire. The Rick Jackson's biography, this is more Brian Kemp than Donald Trump. This is a more mainstream businessman Republican. This reminds me as much of Sonny Perdue, who came in when he blew the doors off of Roy Barnes, and Roy Barnes didn't see it coming. If Burt Jones looked like a loser candidate. And in fact, I'm very curious to see if Donald Trump lifts a finger for Burt Jones in the runoff. Between those two, because I haven't seen evidence that I don't think he loves doubling down on this Burt Jones endorsement, because we know Trump
really
cares.
Yeah. I feel like it feels forced, and it's interesting because I think from the perspective of people I've talked to, this seems like it's going to go to runoff. Might as well just save the resources for the runoff. He cut a video for Burt Jones in the Oval Office. He held a tele rally. I think he kind of re-upped his endorsement on True Social today. But I think the general sense is this is inevitable. It's going to run off. if Trump wants to back his preferred pick, just do it in that 4 weeks instead of doing it before. This is just going to hit a runoff anyway.
You're right, though, Chuck. Rick Jackson. I mean, I said this when we were doing, I think last week, but like, I have a friend who lives in Atlanta who says like literally every single ad is a Rick Jackson ad.
Yep.
Not every single political ad, every single commercial on the television screen.
Well, he had to. He was at
no one knew
zero.
who he was.
Yeah, he had to raise his name ID in a hurry. But and it's a good personal story. Foster guy. He's he's going to bring other people that he's lifted up from foster homes, and he's helped this stuff. I mean, look, if I were a political consultant, I feel pretty good about selling the Rick Jackson biography. I don't know about you, Abby.
Yeah, I think he's going to be very compelling. And I like what you said, kind of on the same wavelength as a Brian Kemp. I mean, when you look at Burt Jones, supported President Trump bid to overturn the 2020 election results. There's a little bit of baggage there. I think what will be most interesting to see if we have a Rick Jackson versus Keisha Lance Bottoms in a general election stage. He just enters with so much money. And the people that I've talked to say that Republicans are preparing to go full force on Keisha Lance Bottoms' record as mayor, on city council, the Atlanta Fulton County Recreation.
No, they're going to try to turn her into who's our Fulton County prosecutor. I mean, they'll probably just
Fonnie Willis.
Fonnie Willis.
You can just feel that coming.
Yeah. So I think that'll be the most interesting, just because, as you said, the financial advantage there, and with that Senate race, I mean, airwave.
Well, what does DGA do there?
I mean, they're going to back her, but it's going to be expensive.
You can back people. Are you going to spend the money?
Yeah. They are very confident about Georgia. I think Keisha Lance Bottoms, I mean, the whole Democratic field, their fundraising hasn't been that competitive when you look at Republicans. They have not really been on the airwaves. I mean, she hasn't really faced any negative ads on the airwaves either in this Democratic primary. I think her opponents have really attacked her record on her Atlanta days on the debate stage and in forums, but that's not reaching the same amount of people that it is when you have an ad running in primetime TV.
I'm not as convinced that her record in Atlanta is going to be as negative as Republican. I know they're going to try to turn her into some liberal, I don't like cops mayor. Yeah. That was not Mayor Lance Bottoms. I remember on a night that there was a disturbance. She got out there and basically was like, get off the street. The curfew is now she took charge.
And
it was one of the few mayors. They sure did. She was one of the few mayors around the country that sort of stepped up and showed a toughness and a spine that I thought separated her from other mayors. So I'm not as convinced. Look, I know what they'll try to do, and it might work in Cobb County, and that's a big deal, and that's the whole goal, right? It's that suburban vote. They need to just not get killed in it if you're a Republican. But I don't think it's, and again, throw in what I think is going to be a supercharged African-American turnout, and, we shall see.
Hey, Abby, I got another question for you. I just want to update people. We are keeping Kentucky 4 on the screen. Ed Gallrein continues to lead. Thomas Massie now ahead by, let me do the math, 5,700 votes. About 50% of the vote is in. I asked the decision desk projection team sort of what to look for. They're waiting on looking at Grant County, few others, just to check their math, make sure they're right. Stay tuned. Again, we still expect a projection by around.
Yeah, look, and you'd rather be Gallrein than Massie. We're not going to sit here.
You continue,
but Massie has had a better election day vote than perhaps some expected.
But we go back and forth on prediction markets, but you can see on the screen there, that's the poly market prediction that's got Gallrein at 99.2%. I'm not sure it's that likely, but Abby, I just want to update people on that and keep people know where we're going. We just had Ruth Servan Smith on from Alabama.al.com. And Chuck and I are, I think, pretty intrigued at the Doug Jones Tuberville thing, which I assume will be formalized tonight. Do you have any sense of that race? Because the question I always have is the way that Tuberville is perceived among people in Washington, Republicans and Democrats, which is kind of like as a,
let's try to think
of a nice word, not impressive guy.
Yeah, kind of like there's sort of, I don't want to say, well, all right.
It's not nothing burger. It's just like a,
And it's not empty soup, but maybe
empty vessel.
Yeah,
how he's
kind of an empty whistle. I guess
yeah,
he's a coach.
Is he perceived like that in Alabama, or is he like the old ball coach? Do you know what I mean? Like, if it was DC people, Republicans and Democrats voting, I'd be skeptical of Tuberville, but it's not. So, like, what is does Doug Jones have a chance?
I think it'll be interesting to see that shakeout. Obviously, they face each other already. From DC Democrats I've talked to, like, they are anticipating really good performance in a lot of these governor's races in red states. Alabama is not on that list when they talk to me about that. I mean, they're naming, a Nebraska before they're going to name an Alabama in a governor's race.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. And that tells me there's some ignorance there at the I'm sorry. You look at Tuberville, who has residency issues, who's got just a terrible, a vacuum of a Senate record. Anyway, that's sort of an odd thing. And then you throw in what's going to be I'm just surprised that they have Nebraska over Alabama. I'm not saying Nebraska's, I'm not like bought in.
It's not like Nebraska's likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's just like, well, it's Tuberville and, because Doug Jones is a good candidate. Yes, he would not have won without Roy Mooring, but he is a solid candidate with like a real resume and stuff. I mean, and, the black vote is not. Okay. And by the way, I am seeing now the screen changing. I just want to.
There it is.
Andy Gallrein defeats Thomas Massie, Donald Trump's sort of political public enemy number one. DDHQ calls it 7:41 p.m. Eastern time, about 40 minutes after all polls closed in Kentucky. Why don't we just go quickly around, Chuck? Thought?
Yep. Look, I mean, this is Donald Trump he's undefeated in his retribution primaries, right? And, I think I'm guessing he cared about Massie more than the Indiana primaries. But look, these have mattered. How do you know they've mattered? Because Kay Ivey changed her mind and did the redistricting after Indiana. Henry McMaster changed his mind after the redistricting primaries in Indiana. I mean, this, striking fear in the hearts of Republicans, fearing that that Trump could end their career in a primary, has been an effective control strategy for Trump, at least inside the party. But it is leading him down the road of in some places nominating and supporting candidates that are going to be harder to elect in a general election, like we're going to see next week in Texas.
Abby, do you have a thought? I mean, I guess, you go, and then I'll give you mine, but go.
I think leading up to this, people viewed this a little bit differently. You saw Bill Cassidy, these state senators, obviously Republicans, obviously leaning towards Trump. But I think people viewed Massie in a different lens. I mean, kind of maybe before all the Epstein and his votes on the war in Iran, but he's a Tea Party Republican. He seemed like someone that would be in Trump's corner for a while. And I think there was a little bit of a different feeling about this than maybe there was about a Bill Cassidy or those Indiana state senators. But
yeah. We talked about that. On Saturday night when we did this live stream with Cassidy. We talked about how it's like, look, Massie is not like a newbie, right? I mean, he's been there since 2012. He has, whether you like him or you hate him, he has a very clear brand in the district. But again, I mean, it really does seem like it's just Donald Trump says do X and enough, not all, but enough Republican voters. This is, to remind people, this is a closed primary, right? So it's only registered Republicans who are voting. And then, the Trump machine did spend real money in this state, $15+ million in this district, $15+ million on ads. And I would tell you the person who has had the worst day, and he probably had the worst day before this, but is John Cornyn, right? I mean, it's like, Trump decides to endorse. You think it might be Cornyn. I saw the Atlantic reported he was leaning toward endorsing Cornyn. He endorses Paxton, and Thomas Massie looks like he's going to lose by it's not going to be 50.5 to 49.5, right?
Yeah.
Just remarkable. I mean,
look, here's the real tests. The real question I have, and we'll bring it back to the race that Abby Turner of National Journal was most focused on when we started our conversation, and that's Georgia governor. Is Donald Trump going to now double down and prove that he's going to stick by those loyal to him and Burt Jones? Burt Jones is going to need a ton of help to defeat Rick Jackson in a runoff. Or does Trump go the cowardly route and co-endorse Rick Jackson, who, by the way, and in fact, this might be a good time to do this. I love this ad because of where do you see the chyrons. Lauren, let's play one of the Rick Jackson ads, and it's the one where Chiron, that's why I'm $1 million donor to Trump. Anyway,
Totally.
I sent them all a ton of cash. Politicians, good and bad. But the only thing they deliver is more bull.
Billionaire businessman Rick Jackson, not a career politician.
President Trump doesn't play by their rules. That's why I gave him $1 million. Trump wins over and over and over. I'm Rick Jackson, and I'm running for governor because that's what I'll do for Georgia.
I'm Rick Jackson, and I have no idea what to do with my hands when I'm standing and talking.
I think that message is brilliant, and here's why. He never says he loves Trump.
Yeah.
He just says, well, Trump wins. That's why and I love that he chirons it, not a donor to Trump. I'm $1 million donor to Trump.
Put that figure in there.
Yeah, I'm going to put that in there. And this is a bit of a response ad to the this is the attack ad that Jones was running against him for being a donor to Stacey Abrams. And he's going, yeah, I gave him all money, right? You know, this is, by the way, Donald Trump said the same thing when he was running in a primary.
Same argument.
Right. I did everything. Yep. And so I find his message to be fascinating. And neither what if Trump decided to double down on Jones, considering what he's been doing lately, wouldn't surprise. Then again, if, we also know that Trump is bought off pretty easily. And so the fact that the guy gave him some money might say, you know what? I love both Burt Jones and Rick Jackson, and Georgia voters are lucky to have them both. That could be his cowardly way out of this one.
And we know Trump doesn't like to endorse losers. If he can endorse both Burt Jones and Rick Jackson and say there's a great choices, we need to be focused on, defeating Democrats, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. It's a win-win situation for him.
And Abby, didn't he endorse Burt Jones before Rick Jackson was even in the race?
Correct.
So that also gives him an out to be like, there are two great choices. You know what I mean? Had I known, I would have endorsed them both. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
Look, I know if I go back, Abby, I know we got to let you go here, but if you're the Democrats and Keisha Lance Bottoms, you'd rather face Burt Jones than Rick Jackson.
For sure.
It's not even a close call, right?
Yeah. For sure. Mm-hmm. Abby Turner, National Journal. I say this to everybody we have on. Go follow her on the social media platforms, folks. Yeah. Support good independent journalism. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you both.
Yep. So Chuck, I'm going to leave this Kentucky thing up. I mean, I think this is.
I'd actually move to Georgia governor now at this point.
I will.
Yeah.
Let's just do one quick thing on this, because I would say if you asked people who follow politics casually, what's the one primary race they knew anything about, it's probably this one.
Yeah.
Because the amount of time Donald Trump spent talking about it, the amount of money, and I continue to go back to where we talk about all the time, which is as Donald Trump gets less popular in the general electorate, he remains this enforcer mob boss of the Republican Party, where you can cross him, but it's probably going to end poorly for you. Go ahead. I'll switch to Georgia governor, by the way.
No, you're not. Look, you're not wrong. And I think I do want to go back to, why did Donald Trump get so fired up about, look, Massie had his own set of enemies. AIPAC and some pro-Israel groups were going to come after Massie regardless of what Donald Trump did. To align with Donald Trump made it a lot easier for that for the combined money to defeat Massie here. But remember what got Trump's ire. I mean, it can't be lost on most folks that his anger at Massie, the obsession with finding, and I believe Gallrein was their second or third attempt at finding.
He was not their first choice.
You're right. They went for somebody else.
Yeah.
And they were just looking for generic veteran. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but that's kind of how he ran. He ran as sort of generic veteran. Hey, he's he served his country.
Former Navy SEAL.
Right. Yeah. And he went after him over the Epstein files.
Yep.
He went after him for doing that discharge petition. It's one of those things that, it's sending a message to Republicans, don't cross me on this, but it does hand the Democrats easy Epstein messaging. And, I've been very curious. I was involved in an interesting off the record event the other night, and there was a fairly prominent Democrat who was who believes the party should run on Epstein, and a lot.
That's very. I've
and
heard,
it surprised me.
It's a very interesting.
And I'm not sure about it myself.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know if it's a Democratic base issue or if it actually kind of crosses over.
Well,
I mean,
the theory is that
this
this is an issue where you get to talk to more than your bubble, right?
Yeah,
it's something that's penetrated multiple bubbles. I mean, look, you got Will Ferrell portraying the ghost of Jeffrey Epstein on SNL.
Oh, no
right?
question.
Like
well,
it is in the zeitgeist, right?
You have
it is in the zeitgeist.
Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Ro Khanna, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, all in the same, Tom Massey, all in the same boat. I mean, how many issues are going to put the five of them all in agreement, right? I mean,
well, and what's Massie like for the rest of this Congress, by the way?
I know I see people in the YouTube are like Massie Unchained, and I'm like, well,
has he been?
It's more Unchained, but
yeah, he hasn't. Yeah,
before.
Right. I don't know. Like, what is more Unchained of Massie mean? But what does that mean? Right? Does he decide to caucus with the independents like Kevin Kiley? I don't know. I'm just like I'm spitballing here. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
Does he campaign for anybody on getting others to publicly disclose the Epstein files, right? Does he make this his cause celeb for the rest of this Congress?
It continues to circulate for far longer than I thought it would. It continues to, but I wanted to draw our attention to this very quickly, Chuck, because we talked about this. We expect, by the way, I'll go back to it, but Georgia Republican governor primary, very close between Rick Jackson and looks like a runoff there.
We're getting close to runoff call there, I think, and being able to comfortably say.
Interesting. This is interesting. Now, again, be wary, 21% of the vote in, but Keisha Lance Bottoms, former mayor of Atlanta, is at 64%. Let me just read you something from the Decision Desk projection team. Very strong Keisha Lance Bottom performance, massive election day shifts in a few counties. Want to confirm this trend, but need to see Atlanta metro area such as DeKalb County. So, but that would be a major, if you had Republicans in a runoff where it's like, I don't know what Donald Trump's going to do, and Keisha Lance Bottoms wins without a runoff, that would be a good sign for Democrats in that state.
This gets to this. We're still only in the anecdotal stage. Okay. We saw a higher than expected turnout among Democrats in Louisiana on Saturday. Okay. It didn't blow the doors off, but it was higher in the black communities than was expected.
Yep.
Right. All of this is in the shadow of what's happened over the last 3 weeks, where Republican governors, Republicans in the South have actively rushed to say, we want to hurry up and get rid of black members of Congress.
Yep.
I think the unintended consequence of this is going to supercharge the messaging for get out the vote among African Americans. And it's possible that Keisha Lance Bottoms is simply benefiting from what is a surge of voters. And she's not the only African American on the primary ballot here, but she is certainly the most prominent.
And I totally agree. Let's just reset just for people who are joining. Ed Gallrein, the Trump recruited, Trump backed candidate, has beaten Thomas Massie according to Decision Desk HQ. This is yet another example of Donald Trump's ability to purge the Republican Party of people who do not agree with him 100% of the time. The big races we're looking at now are the Georgia governor's race, Democrats and Republicans. You see Democrats up here, Keisha Lance Bottoms leading. I will run through these other ones, Chuck, if you want to talk to them. Let me just.
By the way, it is worth noting. Let's stick here at the Georgia Democratic primary for governor a minute.
Yep.
The former Republican lieutenant governor, Brian Kemp's first lieutenant governor, Jeff Duncan, who refused to go along with Trump's
Let me see if I can put
narrative.
There he is.
He is. He is going
7% of the vote.
Yeah, it is.
Party switching.
I highlight this because I wonder, what does this mean for David Jolly in Florida? Is this going to be an issue for him? I mean, he has looked pretty strong, but he's also running against a lifetime Democrat in Jerry Demings, the Orange County mayor. So I wonder here if you go back and forth, right? Everybody loves a convert, right? When somebody flips from their party to theirs,
right.
But it doesn't always sit well with base voters.
If you're a base Democrat, You might like that Jeff Duncan used to be the Republican lieutenant governor and now is a Democrat because of Trump. But Keisha Lance Bottom's been a Democrat her whole life. Do you know what I mean? Like it's the Charlie Crist problem, right? He switches parties. It's like, oh, what a big deal. But Jeff Duncan was everywhere when he switched parties, but 7% of the vote. All right.
There usually is a lower ceiling for party switchers than it feels good early.
Yeah,
and then
you get a lot of attention for it.
Yeah,
but you get
and
votes
you can raise
for
a bunch of money. It's not as always an easy thing because, like I said, he's not even breaking double digits. And by the way, let's go to the Republican primary because the candidate that we're not really talking about here is Brad Raffensperger, and there's no reason to talk about him. But here's a guy that has been a sort of almost a career Republican in the state, a good Republican. He wouldn't go along. Wouldn't go along.
Famously
with,
rejected
Trump.
Donald Trump's pledge to find them more votes.
By the way, his very well-known deputy, Gabe Sterling, is also on the ballot today, is running to replace Brad Raffensperger as Secretary of State.
Secretary of State.
And he has been not doing so hot.
But I will say, by the way, Chuck, just like while we're mentioning Raffensperger, I mean, let me just do all the candidates. Chris Carr, who is getting that's the sitting 2-term state attorney general. I mean, like, it is a pretty deep field in that way. You have the lieutenant governor, Burt Jones. You have a billionaire businessman.
You basically have the two least
attorney general.
You have the two least experienced politicians up at the top because Burt Jones has kind of not been a sort of conventional guy, and obviously not Rick Jackson. And in that sense, that fits the larger narrative of this cycle, which is, hey, nobody wants anybody with establishment.
That's exactly
experience.
right. Don't have Rep, Sen, or Gov next to your name. Let's just run through a few more because I know we got Nathaniel Rakich of VoteBeat coming up at 8, but let me just run through. Here's Republican Georgia Senate, which does very interesting, right? Like,
we got this is going to be a long night to figure out who number 2 is.
Carter and Dooley, right? A real fight
for the second slot here
Dooley for a runoff.
Again, we literally have 1,037 votes separating them right now.
And that, for people who are asked, that is a 50% runoff state, so very likely headed to a runoff with Mike Collins getting.
We know we're gonna have a runoff. It'll be Collins, versus a Buddy or a Dooley.
And Dooley is the Brian Kemp candidate, and Buddy Carter is, sort of MAGA adjacent, put a bunch of his own money into the race, member of Congress. So that's the other big one. Chuck, anything else before we get Nathaniel that you want me to just check in on?
We hit it. Like I said, go back to the
state.
I was just going to say, go back to the Georgia Secretary of State.
Yeah.
I think Gabriel Sterling was one of the great patriots of sort of back in the day where he was, looking out for, talking about people's lives being threatened, and he was standing up for his workers, and just frankly showed some leadership. And probably explains why he's fourth, right?
12%.
That he might not be able to break into the top 2 to get into the runoff there.
I'm going to hand this back.
Are we having a Gabe's
Yeah, we were going to just check in. We would
have
check in on our man Gabe Sterling because, by the way, for most reporters, any reporters watching this, we all have Gabe Sterling in this, right? And he was a very good source for us.
Skelly, before I'm going to let you take back over the results page, I just wanted to put this up for a second and share some info from the Decision Desk HQ projection team, which is for this Georgia governor's race, as you might guess, very likely runoff between Burt Jones and Rick Jackson. Raffensperger pulling from urban areas, which is not super surprising, but getting killed in rural areas.
Our friend, you saw those notes,
surprising.
And this is what's going to be interesting in this runoff between Rick Jackson and Burt Jones, right? Which is who's the Raffensperger voter in theory is the up for grab voter, and they're the non-Trumpy suburban Republican voter. So you might say advantage Jackson, and yet in a runoff, you would assume it's going to be a little more Trumpy of a primary voter. Skelly, what say you?
No, I think that's really an open question. I think I might, given that Burt Jones has President Trump's endorsement, I think a lot comes down it may come down to the extent to which Trump gets involved. He did appear.
We think that he's going to co-endorse.
I
We
would-
think that
Skelly,
he
we were just saying
he could. That's the
Jackson
thing. is
was
he could
not.
do that.
Rick Jackson was not in the race when
Right.
Burt Jones got the Trump endorsement, which definitely opens the door for
Yeah, and
Donald Trump to
Jackson,
go with wealthy
you know,
business guy who's never run.
There've been a
for
lot of
anything
questions.
before.
Jackson gave like $1 million to one of the Trump vehicles. I think it was the MAGA.
Oh,
Inc.
he says it. We played the ad. While
And
you
he,
were,
I know,
what-
I know.
yeah,
He,
yeah.
he
It's a
placed
great
it in
ad.
that ad. He mentions
yeah.
it very specifically.
and
I've never seen
Chiron's.
that before.
We love it.
I've
It's
never seen it.
Chiron. It's
I
not
gave him
Chiron
$1 million.
Trump donor. It's $1 million donor.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Like I've
Donald
never heard anyone tout
Never
a
seen that
seven-figure donation in an ad before. I mean, it just speaks to like the Trump,
my
how
God.
Trump has changed.
You've heard Mitt
things.
Romney say he'd bet $10,000, but you know,
Yeah, I do remember.
on
Those are
stage, yeah,
quaint,
but,
right? Those are quaint. I
That
mean,
was
you know, to
quaint,
think
apparently.
Mitt Romney took crap for that. you know?
2012. What a different world.
Golly.
But yeah, I think for Jones, you know, a lot comes down to how committed is Trump to helping him. You know, if
That's my
Jones does
curiosity.
finish first, you know, maybe that's a pin in his hat, something that,
Yeah,
that
Paxton didn't finish first.
I was going to say we were
True.
saying that with John Cornyn.
right. But Paxton was always more clearly Trump's candidate
True.
in terms of, whereas this is harder to parse. I think just that Jackson has certainly made appeals in a Trumpian mode. Jones, though, is technically the Trump endorsed candidate and is someone that Trump apparently likes. I mean, he liked it enough that he did appear in an ad in person for Jones. So, you know, it's really unpredictable.
Well, and that's what we were discussing, right? I think it was Jessica that's pointed this out, that like 6 months ago, you could get Trump to agree to endorse your Mike Rogers and your John Sununu.
Yes.
You know, right now he's in this, everybody hates me, I'm going back to my base, give me my blankie. And it could be that he doubles down on people that were with him from the beginning. And Burt Jones was with him from the beginning. That's right.
He has.
And
Hey, let's bring in Nathaniel Rakich of Vote Beat.
Do we get to? Are we gonna talk about five?
There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh, wearing some Georgia.
Go
Wearing some
Braves.
Georgia propaganda there.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
many hats does
you're a-
Nathaniel own?
And
I've
Nathaniel,
owned over 100 hats, Chris.
Okay, so you have one that can check our box for any night
Oh,
we
yeah.
have you. What?
So I
you
was
have an
thinking about this, and
Idaho
I don't
hat.
think I have one for Massie. I have a Reds hat, which is right across the river, but I
Yep.
don't have
no
any
Louisville
for-
Cardinals hat. You don't have
No,
a Louisville
I haven't
Cardinals
made it
hat
out there yet.
All right.
Love it.
Wait, is it the Louisville Bats? What's the name of the AAA?
Louisville Bats, yeah.
The Bats, right?
The
Yeah,
Bats.
yeah.
Not as good
Well,
as
they make
my
the bats.
hometown.
Is this a 538 reunion here?
Yard Goat.
Oh, yeah.
Hartford Yard Goats.
Is this a
I've seen
538
that
reunion?
collection.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, this is a 538 reunion.
Do we
Bring
bring up?
news on that front.
Yeah. Do we want to bring that up, or are we gonna set that
Can I
aside?
just
No.
say, I don't know if they can say it, but this is utter and complete bullshit what ABC and Disney is doing.
wow.
They have,
Yeah.
for
Well,
people
we
who
will
don't
say
know,
it. That's
they
right.
have now taken down
Oh, I don't have an
all
NDA or anything.
of the
They can-
538 information. You
It just
cannot
seems
find it.
ridiculous.
It's why.
I
Did
think
you
it is one of
guys
those
do
things
something
where
terrible to them?
if we were,
No,
I
don't
think
put him on
problem
the
is that
spot,
we're not,
Chris.
we're not surprised.
Yeah.
We're just disappointed. You know.
Yeah, God, it's
That's
just
a
so
great-
dumb. Like, as an election
Well,
person,
by
we
the
lose
way,
so much
you know-
data for what reason?
There are certain podcasts that I've done that are no longer available
Yeah,
from a
that's
certain
true.
other media conglomerate. These
It's
things
just
happen.
so dumb.
Media conglomerates, you know, it's sort of like, you know, good luck finding old episodes of Different Strokes on Disney these days
I know.
either. So, you know,
All right.
it's really tough. Nathaniel, let's talk some Georgia politics.
All right, let's do it.
So we're a couple things. One, Keisha Lance Bottoms may avoid a runoff.
Yes.
And it's early, but I'm on this. I've been very curious to watch African American turnout since the remap, since voter. And I was a higher inspector turnout in Louisiana. That intrigued me. Again, these are small indications so far, not huge. But what are we seeing here? Are you surprised she's going to avoid a runoff? We're not 100% there, but we're close.
I think it was on the fence. I think one thing that's important when looking at like polling of the race is that polls have undecided voters and elections don't. So I don't know exactly what the DDHQ polling average had.
Unless you live in Nevada.
Have one. We didn't actually quite
forget.
have
That's
one
true.
for the Democrats.
Okay, well, there you go.
Many
But
polls,
in most polls that I saw were like Bottoms was at like 45%, which, you know, like obviously if that was the election result would not have been enough to avoid a runoff. But undecided's come off the fence. They'd probably break disproportionately for the front runner. Like, it's not shocking that she was there. Even if they went to a runoff too, she would have won. Like, she would have had such a small kind of gap to make up. So ultimately, I'm not surprised that she's going to be the nominee. You know, not sure that she was Democrats' best choice, but it also looks like, you know, there's a decent chance that Republicans will nominate a flawed candidate in Burt Jones. So that, you know, it's certainly going to be an interesting race.
That's an interesting.
Wow, you're talk more about Burt Jones.
You're all in on Burt Jones.
Yeah, we've been going back and
forth. We're a little skeptical.
Burt Jones versus Rick Jackson, like who wins that runoff?
We have this has the whiff of one of these dual endorsements from Trump.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I was listening to you guys talking about that beforehand. I mean, I think it's still very TBD. I do want to wait and see what the final result of the primary is, right? You know, election day votes might be shaking out differently. We don't really know. But I mean, Jones is definitely the Trumpier candidate. But he's very far to the right? This is a like serious kind of like, you know, election denier, January 6th type of candidate. And he's reminiscent to me of the types of candidates that Republicans have kind of gone down in flames with in previous elections. Carrie Lake, Doug Mastriano, you know, Lance Bottoms, I think, you know, is uninspiring to a lot of Democrats, but, you know, she probably can beat somebody like that. I think Rick Jackson with his, you know, war chest and kind of lack of baggage might be a more.
So does this mean the DGA ought to come in on behalf of Burt Jones during the runoff?
Far be it from me to give
Burt Jones is just too Trumpy. He's too Trumpy.
That might be a little clever. Yeah, it certainly has been. You know, they've done it before, or other
too conservative. Too liberal.
Well, they're doing it already right now with Steve Hilton in California. They've been running. There's a third party, a super PAC that's switched to Steve Hilton is really conservative, you know?
Yeah.
Nathaniel, were you surprised?
They have the excuse to being like, it's the same primary, right? Like, I feel like the optics are
right. You're not dabbling in the other side's primary. Exactly, yeah. Nathaniel, were you surprised at all, based on what we've seen this month or this last decade, that Ed Gulrine beat Thomas Massie tonight?
No, I was not. I think we talked about this with Indiana, right? We just saw a really impressive display of Trump's power in the Republican Party when I think 5 of the candidates he endorsed against incumbent Indiana state senators lost. You know, Massie did have that kind of, you know, he had been around for a while. He had kind of a unique brand there, but, you know, at the end of the day, obviously it was too, you know, Trump's endorsement was too strong. I went back earlier today and, you know, at 538, speaking of which, we had data, hint, guys, on Trump's endorsed candidates and how they did in primaries going back to the start of Trump's first term. And I looked at the few instances in which Trump endorsed against incumbents, and 6 of those incumbents won and 10 of those incumbents lost. So it would not have been unheard of for Massie to have pulled it off. Some of them did. Brian Kemp, for instance, in Georgia, was able to overcome that disadvantage of being endorsed against by Trump. But the odds were, you know, it was more likely than not, I think, that somebody in Massie's position was going to lose.
By the way, because I follow Nathaniel on X and he's a great follow, I have this up because it's worth noting. So just to go through that list, he said, when Trump endorses against incumbents, Mark Sanford in the House lost. Jeff Collier for Kansas governor lost. David McKinley in West Virginia House lost. In Idaho, Brad Little won. Brian Kemp won. In Georgia, Nancy Mace in South Carolina. Tom Rice in South Carolina lost. Rodney Davis lost. Peter Meyer lost. Jamie Herrera Butler lost. You know, it's a little bit more of a mixed bag. I love that stat, Nathaniel, because I always assume, like, basically if he endorses against you, you're going to lose. And it wasn't, you know, Lisa Murkowski won. I mean, it's not everyone, but it's a little more.
He does have a harder time you know, if there's a pattern, statewide versus congressional. Seems to have a little better record.
I think it's hard to win without his endorsement. Yeah,
I think the bigger name you are, the more of an individual brand you are. Obviously, Murkowski has that in spades. You know, I also think obviously a fair number of Murkowski, Dan Newhouse, and there was somebody else on that list. Jen Huston, I think twice on that list, both survived, but they were running in like non-partisan primaries, right? Alaska has the top 4 system.
That's right.
Washington has the top 2. And so I think that helps. So if you take those out, then Trump's record is even stronger in like,
it's like we were talking about Louisiana. Like if Bill Cassidy had run under the old rules, the rules that all the congressional members will run under, the jungle primary rules,
conveniently,
does he have a chance, right? He has no chance really in a mostly closed primary. It's the same kind of thing. It's like, and that really I guess if you say like, could Thomas Massie have won? Maybe if it wasn't a closed primary, it'd be more competitive, but in a closed primary with that amount of spending, with Donald Trump that vociferously against you, that's so hard.
Hey, Nathaniel, I want to talk about your piece that you wrote that went up yesterday about looking at how there's this, that voters are both concerned about the things that Trump talks about with elections, but at the same time, there's an uptick in concern about disenfranchisement. What's your takeaway from this? You dug deep into this on trying to see where are voters on sort of, I think it's election administration, I guess we would call it.
No, I appreciate you bringing this up. So Chuck is referring to the article I wrote for VoteBeat, where my day job yesterday. It's at votebeat.org. You can check it out. So it's basically a roundup of polls of how people are thinking about the midterms in terms of just kind of like voting access and the administration rather than like who was going to win. And I thought the findings were really interesting, right? Because in many ways, we are very divided as a country, on all issues, but including on how elections should be run, right? And, according to the polls, you do see a healthy minority of voters, around 40%, saying they are concerned about fraud. They think that past elections have been fraudulent, similar to the way that Trump says. And you do see a lot of support for some of Trump's proposals to kind of tighten election rules. So things like the SAVE Act to require proof of citizenship when registering to vote, very popular. Things like photo ID to vote, very popular. But at the same time, the same polls say when you basically pit the question of like, what's more important, like preventing non-citizens from voting or making sure that everybody who is eligible to vote can vote, Americans pick the kind of the eligible one, the more democratic and liberal coded position. There are also the number of Americans who say that they're concerned about voter disenfranchisement is also higher than the number who say they're concerned about election fraud. The Americans oppose the idea of sending troops to polling places, which is something that's kind of been in the air. The Trump administration says that they're not going to do that, but I think a lot of, in particular, like liberal groups and Democrats are still worried about it. And so it does seem that there are kind of Americans share kind of, they're pulling a little bit from both sides on this issue. And, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's like, I feel like your piece, you could write the bill that actually could pass, which is
exactly.
Same day voter registration with a voter ID, right? Like with a photo ID, like let's go, right?
If people like Trump hadn't kind of poisoned the well, so to say, on the issue of voting, if you just ask people kind of like divorced from Trumpism, like what kind of voting policies do you support? There is a clear kind of compromise to be built about, let's strengthen certain areas of, voter security, but let's also increase access the way that many states have done. Voting by mail, by the way, is also very popular. Obviously, Trump has extremely opposed that. It's an issue that is kind of, it's frustrating how much it has been partisan.
It frustrates me because this is one where the compromise is obvious.
But we just can't. To Nathaniel's point, we can't get out of our own way because it has been politicized, even though there's clear agreement on a set of. I mean, hey Jeffrey, can we go slightly nerdy because I think Nathaniel can do this? Can you talk about the Georgia State Supreme Court race?
Yes. Glad you brought it up.
Nathaniel wanted in on that. Yeah.
Our Slack channel is all alive with talking about it. So just talk this. People are not going to necessarily know what we're looking at here. So explain.
Who's yellow and who's green? Yeah.
What's really fascinating is that so the greenish teal color here. Actually, maybe this one's easier. We'll start with this one because it's closer. There are 2 seats that are up. The greenish bluish color, teal or whatever, is the Democratic backed candidate, and the gold color is the incumbent who is supported by Republicans, and that's true for both of them. But what's interesting is that one of the races, this one, the one between Charlie Bethel and Miracle Rankin, is very close, nearly 50-50. But we've already projected the other one for the incumbent. Sarah Hawkins Warren, who is up about 60-40. And it's just interesting to see this big of a gap in a state where you don't
know the party, right?
No, 60.
And you don't know. They're officially nonpartisan.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's the left? Who's the right in this case?
Sorry. Well, I'm saying the Democrats were backing Miracle Rankin and Jen Jordan, who are the two sort of
left leaning.
Yes, left leaning. Yeah, I mean Jen Jordan's a former Democratic state senator.
That's right. I knew that name. Right.
And Charlie Bethel, the incumbent, is a former Republican legislator in this race. So yeah.
Skelly,
I'd be very curious.
Sorry, Nathaniel. Let's do a little news quickly, which is I believe we have the projection on
We're calling Georgia
governor's race.
Republican.
So if you want to do that.
It is going to be a runoff. Rick Jackson and Burt Jones. We've been sort of telegraphing this all night, but this officially ends the Brad Raffensperger for governor campaign. That's essentially he finished.
Don't forget the Chris Carr for governor. Chuck, the guy's the sitting attorney general.
And I was just going to say we have three statewide officials running, right? And attorney general and the secretary of state are sort of semi also rans in this case, fighting for the bronze medal. Look, Burt Jones, Rick Jackson. Look, we've played you the Jackson ad. Lauren, while we're here, let's play how Burt Jones has been attacking Rick Jackson to give you a taste of what this runoff could look like.
Rick Jackson wants conservatives to think he's one of us. But behind closed doors, he donated money to Stacey Abrams. Yep, you heard that right. Fake Trump conservative Rick Jackson gave money to Stacey Abrams. The same Georgia-hating liberal trying to turn our state blue. How many Trump conservatives do you know who've donated to Stacey Abrams? Rick says he's conservative, but Rick Jackson is a fraud.
An interesting way of putting it. Rick says he's a conservative, but Rick Jackson is.
It's so bad. I love that Stacey Abrams. I mean, my gosh, how long are they going to use her?
Well, I mean,
Stacey Abrams around.
They used Ted Kennedy for 30 years, so who's to say how long that's going to hold?
Nathaniel,
but it just,
go ahead.
No, let's let Nathaniel get one. We got to let him run here. So go ahead. Give us your
last Georgia take.
Give us your last Georgia take here.
Well, I mean, I think we talked about the governor's race. I would just be curious, as you guys get ready to talk to Tia Mitchell, who's a great reporter,
and that's why
Georgia.
we're anxious to talk with her.
I would be curious to hear her theories on why you see such separation in the state Supreme Court race. I wonder if Jordan does have that history of running as a partisan Democrat. I wonder if that could be part of it. There's also a difference. Rankin is Black and Jordan is white. And speaking to Chuck, your point earlier about African American turnout, if you look particularly at Clayton County, that is really kind of shocking to me. So I think right now, Rankin is leading there, like 70% of the vote. And this is
I'm with you.
Like
I noticed it too.
Heavily African American county.
I'm telling you, I had a feel this is going to be
Jordan is losing
this year.
in this county, which you cannot do as a Democrat or Democratic aligned candidate.
Yeah, Democrats should not be losing this.
Very hard to lose.
Endorsed candidates should not be. Yeah, so 71% in one and about 50% in in the other. That's a huge difference.
Nathaniel, you were terrific. Great.
You're the man, dude. Vote. Go read Nathaniel's stuff. Read smart people.
Go Barbs.
Have a good night.
Well, he just teed up our next guest. Let's bring in my friend Tia Mitchell from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Hey.
Tia, great to see you, Tia. Thanks for you on location. Tell us where you're from. Tell us where you're at right now.
Tia, can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Tia? She may not be able to hear me. Chris, give it a shot. Jeffrey, give it a shot.
Tia, can you hear us?
Can you hear any of us? Let's see.
Oh, dear. Lauren, you want to check on that, and we'll bring her back up if we can get her, because she's the best. Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
No. It looks like she's at a headquarters, which is
she's
even
there,
better.
which we're always dealing with Wi-Fi issues. I'm actually surprised it doesn't happen more. I
was just gonna say we've had an almost glitch-free situation.
So Lauren, just let us know in the chat if we can figure out how she can hear us. Hey, Jeffrey, can you put up the Georgia Democratic governor primary? I just want to check on Keisha Lance Bottoms. So still
60%. Yeah. No, I think she's got a pretty good shot at pulling this thing out. I mean, we got still a while to go, but given that Estevez's strength is also in the Atlanta metro area. You know, it is, of course, interesting that the worst place that she's doing is DeKalb. And also she might not do as well in Fulton, which is where Atlanta is. And that speaks to maybe some of her potential weaknesses.
I was just going to say, those are know her best. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
it is kind of fascinating that's where she's performing worst. Yeah.
Well,
I'm checking on Tia as we speak, by the way.
We are working on trying to fix
we're
that.
efforting.
I hear somebody ask, where do you find Nathaniel? Nathaniel's at votebeat.org.
Yes.
Very, very, the 538 diaspora has been somewhat hard to follow. Skelly is part of it. Obviously, most people know Nate has his own, Silver has his own thing. But Nathaniel, one of the really depressing things about the disbanding of 538, but forget everything else they've done is, yes, a lot of people knew Jeffrey, some people knew Nathaniel, most everyone knew Nate, but there are a lot of good people who work there. And, you know, it's sort of a bummer.
We have an active Slack.
Good. Okay, that's good.
The alumni, we're pretty close.
So Tia,
it was a really great place to work.
Tia, we are working on Tia.
We're working on that. The big breaking news is James Wood just hit a grand slam.
Hey,
all right. Thanks. My son report. My on the ground field reporter. I think my son. Let me know of that one.
So
where do we have any projections on that?
Sorry, go ahead.
They're still losing, by the way,
because I know folks were talking about it some in the chat, and this is so Pennsylvania. We're starting to get some votes in, early vote in from Pennsylvania. After the 2020 election, when Pennsylvania changed some of its rules about how they could go about counting things, they got a lot faster at getting in.
They were notoriously a pain in the.
Yeah, Pennsylvania used to be a very slow state.
Yeah,
and so they at least have, and obviously Democrats are somewhat more likely to still vote early or vote by mail than Republicans, though that split's not nearly as large as it was in the immediate, in 2020 in the immediate aftermath. But this is a heavily, basically the most Democratic seat in the country. One of them, I think Aaron Covey mentioned that earlier when she was on.
The most, she said in the Cook report, it's the one that they have their standards. Yes.
It is the most, but you have a three-way race here between pediatric surgeon Alice Stanford, state rep Chris Robb, who is sort of the most progressive candidate in the race, and then Sharif Street, who is the sort of the most establishment candidate. Although Stanford
John
has
Street's
Evans'
son, right? Yeah.
Yes,
that's John Street's son.
Yep,
Nepo baby.
I did not realize
we've had quite a few Nepo babies.
Now Stanford,
we got Jim Kingston, we got a Street, we got all sorts of Nepo.
I should have assumed because of where the district is, but yeah.
So what's interesting here is that Stanford had the most outside support and sort of in terms of spending. There was a bunch of spending by a group called 314 Action that supports basically is trying to elect more science focused or science literate people to Congress. And they spent a lot of money on her, but they went off air just before the election, which caused some people to think, well, maybe they're not quite maybe they're not as confident about her chances in the end. But obviously she is leading here in this initial drop, which is, about 2/5 of the vote that we're expecting from this district. So I guess the question really is, in election day vote, is Chris Rabb going to make a push? I think we do often tend to see more progressive candidates do better in election day vote. Yep. And to be clear, Rabb would be very much in sort of the squad in Byron's
been endorsed by several of them, correct?
Yes.
No, a DSA. I mean, a DSA. A DSA. A proud DSA, right?
So it'll be very interesting once we get more election day vote. How this shakes out. In terms of at the end of the day, the more establishment Democrats may be wondering, if we could have just had just one of those two.
Hey, can we?
Well, good news.
We have solved the Tia
Let's
Mitchell
do it.
problem. Let's try.
All right, Tia.
Can you hear us?
Yes. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Right. Hey. Tell us where you're coming from. Are you in headquarters? You at headquarters?
Uh-oh. See, the internet is this is the problem.
Hold on,
Lauren, take her down. Just let her know we can't. It's all pixelated, her sound. What a bummer. She's okay. Look, if we can't get Tia, There are two people you need to follow in Georgia. One's name is Greg Bluestein. He's at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
And then Tia Mitchell.
And Tia Mitchell. So if you need to follow
Both
people
AJC.
who are really smart about that, I wanted one other quick thing. I'm just seeing again from Decision Desk projection room, Georgia Republican Senate race nearing a projection. Want to see more election data just to make sure Mike Collins is not getting to 50.
Yeah, we're pretty confident it's going to be a runoff. And then, of course, we may have to wait till all the votes are counted to actually figure out if it's going to be Dooley or Carter.
Can you pop to that, Jeffrey, real quick? I just want to see if
I'm bringing it up right now.
Yeah, no, because we were just
we
were
like
just
Tia's
looking.
Get fixed again.
Yeah. So there's Collins, and Dooley is now in
41.
second.
Right. Tia's back.
Tia,
we feel better.
Hey.
All right.
Hey there.
Jackson, Georgia, guys. So there's not really strong cell phone service, and the Wi-Fi is. Work with me, but thank you guys for being patient.
Well, we got your audio, so hit us up. We've got a bunch of questions for you, but let's start with Keisha Lance Bottoms may avoid a runoff, and we're all a little mildly surprised on that. What do you see? What do you make of that?
So I'm a little bit surprised because, they're particularly in the days up to early voting and during early voting, there was a lot of discourse about the support Keisha Lance Bottoms had. A lot of people reanalyzing her tenure as Atlanta mayor, and a lot of Democratic voters saying they had problems with her and she was not the person that they were encouraging people to support in this primary. Of course, we always expected her to get the most votes. The fact that she might win outright and win so commandingly in such a crowded field, I think is surprising.
Yes, totally agree.
Skelly, you had your Supreme Court question. Hit her with it.
Yes, there seems to be a pretty dramatic difference between the results in the Charlie Bethel race, which is very close, close to 50-50 right now. And then in the Sarah Hawkins Warren race, we've actually already projected it for her. Although, did that just change? Oh, you know what?
Did you pull the projection?
Was it a vote issue?
I think there may have been a vote issue.
Let's like a misreport.
Well, you know what? We'll come back to that because I don't know. That doesn't seem right.
It had looked weird the whole night, but anyway. But let's go back to Miracle Rankin and how well she was doing in a couple of counties that you wanted to point out.
Yes. Oh no. To be clear, the numbers are right. Sorry, there was some. I don't know. The data was whatever. I refreshed it and it looks right again. So Sarah Hawkins Warren's at about 60%, whereas Charlie Bethel's at 51%, and so it's pretty big gap there that I think is striking.
So I will say when I was out, I've been in Georgia for the last few days on the campaign trail, and Sarah Hawkins Warren had a stronger campaign than Charlie Bethel. And unlike Miracle Rankin and Jen Jordan, they were not running as this ticket. They were the two incumbents were running their own races. And I did see kind of signs. For example, I was in Cobb County going to a Derek Dooley event yesterday. I saw, again, signs in the yards for Judge Warren. And I just she had a better ground game than him. She might have took the challenge a little bit more seriously. I think she was on TV a little bit more than him and things like that. I do also think the matchup matters. Miracle Rankin, being a Black woman, I think she appeals to Black voters, which, as we know, are the base of the Democratic Party, and maybe was able to drum up a little bit more turnout in her race.
Speaking of African American turnout, I've been trumpeting a potential thesis that in response to the gutting of the Voting Rights Act and the massive redistricting across the South, that it's likely to supercharge African American turnout in general the rest of this cycle. We saw a bit of an increase in Louisiana on Saturday. That was a bigger turnout than expected. Are we seeing that tonight here in Georgia?
So I think it's a little bit early to tell, but the AJC, my colleague, you guys mentioned Greg Bluestein earlier, he talked about election day turnout, even that it looks like Democrats may have outpaced Republicans, not just in early voting, but in overall turnout this primary, which will make it interesting. as we look at total vote count at the end of the night, again, the only race that will be finalized today are the two, as far as like final, not going to a general election and things like that, are those two state Supreme Court seats. And it'll be interesting if even with Democrats having this higher turnout, that doesn't result in the two Democratic aligned candidates both winning these Supreme Court races. But I also think, for better or for worse, people didn't really understand that today was the one and only day of, that today was final for these Supreme Court races, which is different than virtually every other race on the ballot.
Because it's a primary for everybody else. I mean, that's
right.
Yeah, I mean,
so I don't know how well people understood that. Quite frankly, that was some of the criticism as to why those races were scheduled like that in the first place. We talk about, you talked about the Voting Rights Act. I don't want to go too much on a tangent, but Georgia's runoff system in and of itself is kind of a vestige of the Jim Crow era. And we can't, separate the choices that are made with elections,
I mean, just about
totally
every state,
right.
Most states gave up their runoffs in the South except Georgia.
My wife was asking. My wife was asking today. We had lunch, and she was like, "Why is there a runoff?" And I was like, "Well, because they didn't want the black candidate to win. That's how it started.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not
That's
complicated."
kind of how it's not.
And for people who don't know that
see,
history,
right? And you can see how that happens and how it works. And again, there are so many complicated conversations we're having now about how race affects elections, how partisanship and race are so closely aligned. Of course, we're going to be talking a lot about race in the context of the Democratic Party in states like Georgia. And there are very layered and nuanced conversations.
I know you've been dabbling in the Senate race. You were talking about being at a Derek Dooley event. You've talked with the Ossoff campaign. Do they have a preference of how they'd like to see that Senate runoff play out?
So Ossoff will say no. He'll say whoever wins, he's ready to take him on in November. I have long said that I think Mike Collins, that's who, I don't know if that broke up earlier. I'm at Mike Collins' election night party right now in Jackson, Georgia. I think Mike Collins is probably is the best person to take on Ossoff in certain ways. Ossoff is a great debater. I think Mike Collins is known for his sharp elbow tactics and how he, is sharp on social media, but also knows how to connect with more traditional voters in person. So I think Mike Collins probably is the strongest as far as, able to match up Ossoff's energy. Buddy Carter would probably say he's stronger because he's had longer serving in the House and doesn't have some of the baggage of Mike Collins, such as the ethics probe. And then, of course, Derek Dooley would say, I'm the strongest because I don't have the baggage of the voting record and the MAGA that both Representative Collins and Representative Carter bring to the table.
He's got a golden last name.
And he has a golden last name, his dad being the famous Georgia coach. But, they've been ridiculing Derek Dooley's coaching tenure, his win-loss record.
Yeah. Well, Tia Mitchell, folks, just follow Tia and her colleague Greg Bluestein. That will be what you need to know. But also, special shout out to our friend Patricia Murphy, who is also there. Yes. Three great reporters. And Tia, thank you. I will say, by the end of this, you're coming in perfectly clear. It's like you're in the next room. So shout out to the internet. Well done, internet. Thank you for persevering.
Shout out to the internet and shout out to the 2 bars of service I was able to get in Jackson, Georgia.
Tia, take care. Stay cool.
Thank you,
Tia. Great to see you, Tia.
Thank you, guys.
She's the best. That's fascinating, by the way, real quick, Chuck. Fascinating that she sees Collins as potentially a good matchup with Ossoff because of kind of the personality. I mean, we will say for folks who are not familiar,
hey man,
Derek Dooley
that's the better copy. That's unlike the reporter that says, "Hey man, Collins is better copy."
Derek Dooley is not exactly a world beater in terms of personality. Let's just leave it at that. You want to bring in Patrick?
Yeah, Mr. Ruffini. Let's bring him in from Echelon Insights.
Love him.
Look at him, Ruffini. Good to see you, brother. Echelon Insights, Republican polling firm.
Subscribe to his Substack, The Intersection. Great. You will get smarter by subscribing to it.
It is.
Just go do it.
He's got his, he may have partisan leans, but that newsletter is data driven. It's fantastic.
I love it. It's one of my favorites.
So even if you're on the left and disagree with his politics, his data is not partisan. Mr. Ruffini, what are you watching tonight that has grabbed your attention the most so far?
Well, look, I mean, I think just given the news today out of Texas, there's obviously going to be a lot of focus on the Trump endorsement, but I feel like we're just seeing the different ways it plays out, right? I mean, this is not from it being decisive in Kentucky 4 to it not being necessarily a golden ticket in, the Georgia governor's race in terms of, potentially losing out. And, I think Rick Jackson would frankly be favored in a runoff situation.
So you think that too? I do too.
We were debating that, Patrick.
Give us the
why.
Yeah, give us, you look at it by the numbers. What makes Jackson the favorite in your opinion?
Well, I think, he came in late. And so, obviously a Trump style business person. I mean, you saw that ad. That was a great ad. But everything we've seen so far is he is, I think, the more Kemp coded candidate. And you look at the candidates who did not make the runoff, who were not going to make the runoff, and it's Brad Raffensperger and it's Chris Carr.
Yeah, it's 26% of the vote right now.
Combined, they wouldn't make the runoff, by the way.
That is
okay.
Yeah. But where their votes going to go, and I just kind of see their votes not.
I'd rather be.
They're going to go to Jackson. Like Burt Jones. If we had ranked choice, Burt Jones would unlikely be their second pick. Right.
Am I the old guy in the room that I keep hearing Burt Jones and think of the failed Baltimore Colts quarterback? But anyway,
yes, you are.
Yeah, I am. I know. I'm
Wait,
really showing my age.
Were in Baltimore?
I know. Let's see if anybody in our chat stream will give me a shout out for the Burt Jones reference. But anyway, go.
Patrick,
but I digress.
I just want to get at, it's been called for almost an hour at this point, but you mentioned it. But Galrein, Massie, how much the polling was a little bit all over the place, but it seemed to be pointing more towards Galrein than Massie by the end. What do you make? Is there any lesson beyond, effing with Donald Trump in a closed Republican primary is really bad politics? Like, what do you, looking at this month from Indiana to Bill Cassidy to now Thomas Massie, like, are there lessons you learn as a Republican pollster if you're advising candidates?
Well, look, I think there's that component definitely that looms large over everything, but also this idea of, again, this sort of isolationist wing of the Republican Party, and that's super mad at Trump over Iran, and it's rebelling from him, from a America First, really the brand of the party that Massie represented. Look, I mean, I think that's not quite as strong as people are, I think are assuming. I think it's still a very traditional Republican electorate. One of the things, even with the polling all over the place, one of these things you saw in the polling was a huge age split, where Galrein was winning, the Fox News voter was winning the 55 plus voter.
Yep.
And I think that there is, I think particularly when you have these outside pollsters polling races, I don't think they necessarily are polling, when you have a divide like that, I think that candidate is favored, right? I mean, presumptively, the candidate represents that traditional 4-4 Republican primary voter. And I think, Galrein captured that in addition to being the Trump back candidate.
Yeah. Yeah, the sort of Fox News watcher is like a good thing in a low turnout primary. That's probably who comes out and votes all the time. Yeah.
Patrick, what do you make right now? It appears, and Tia Mitchell, our last guest, brought this up. It appears that there are going to be more Democrats voting in this primary in Georgia than Republicans. Just total vote. All of the competition arguably was more on the Republican side of the aisle, right? The two big races, the Senate race, the gov race. We were looking for some Ossoff ads. He really hasn't run much. Obviously, there was some activity on the gov race. How troubling of a sign is that for Team Red?
Well, we'll see where it shakes out. But
Okay.
look, historically, the primary turnout's a pretty good indicator for November.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, actually, that's one of the best metrics you can have. And it doesn't necessarily, like, it's not necessarily state
It's
by
close.
state.
I don't want to sit here and say it's not a blowout. It is close, but that aggregate is, we're looking at about a 30,000 vote gap right now.
Right. But like the national, just sort of the national aggregate, right? It's just a better indicator than special elections, even, right? And I think especially lately, I think it's a better indicator than special elections. So I think it does indicate, yes, it's a pro-democratic environment. Now, I would say in Georgia, in particular, I mean, I think we've seen, it wasn't the case in Louisiana that either Democrats came close or actually exceeded.
They came much closer. It was, they didn't exceed Republicans, but there was another one. And is it an increased turnout? I had my buddy Dave Konevsky said, actually, the evidence he's seen so far, it's actually increased white Democratic turnout so far more than it's increased black Democratic turnout. But in Louisiana, we saw Orleans Parish had a higher than expected projection, and so did the Baton Rouge area. So, and there's clearly some evidence here in Georgia that we're seeing strong performances by African-American candidates at the top of the ticket.
And that split right on the Georgia Supreme Court election, where you have a white Democrat versus an African American. I mean, I think that to a large degree, you saw that going back to Texas, where all the increase in turnout was on the Democratic side, on the among white voters. That's where the increase came from. And it seems like
that was pre-voting rights acts, which has sort of changed the conversation in the South.
I think that has changed the conversation in the South. But we also saw in Virginia there was strong Republican turnout. So when when you're literally taking congressional districts away from people that turns out to be a pretty big motivating factor.
Excellent point.
Totally
Virginia.
Right.
Yep.
Totally
absolutely.
right. So hey, Skelly, do you want to do?
Yeah,
Patrick, hold on. We just want to do a little news here.
We have a projection.
Half a projection, right?
Mike Collins will progress to a runoff, and now the question is, will he face Derek Dooley or will he face Carter? And they are obviously running very close. You can see on the map here, Carter represents the first district down here in sort of coastal Savannah, eastern part of the state. Dooley is doing best in the Atlanta metro area, which maybe makes sense. That's probably the place where you'd find the most Brian Kemp sort of aligned voters in the current makeup of things. So given that Kemp is backing Dooley and Carter's home base, and now it's just sort of a question to see who can gain the most and what's outstanding.
Patrick, what do you make of that?
There's less than 5,000 votes separate Dooley and Carter, and we still have more than half the votes.
We've got a ton of votes left. Yeah.
This is going to be, we're going to wait till they're all counted there. So Mr. Rapini,
Collins, not surprising, right, that he advances to the runoff. But what do you make of, because Dooley and Carter, I mean, Dooley is clearly the Kemp candidate, right? Carter, who knows? But like, what do you make of that? Would you expect Collins to beat either of them in a runoff with a potential Trump endorsement? Like, what do you make of what this tells us about the Republican Party and obviously a critical swing state we expect in 26 and 28?
Look, I think Collins is better positioned at a very minimum than Burt Jones is at the moment. And I do think it seems like the math is there for him to prevail in a runoff. It just seems like, really in terms of which one goes in there. I mean, this is all like what's still outstanding, right? It seems just eyeballing that maybe there's more Metro Atlanta outstanding than a lot of votes there. So maybe I'd give the edge to Dooley, but to make the runoff. But I still think that Collins is in a pretty strong position in that runoff.
Yeah.
In this environment, we just talked about it. My thesis is if I were the Republicans, I'd rather have the person with the first name of Coach than Congressman, in this political year. And Dooley's a little more blank slate-ish. And it's a lot easier to run as a blank slate, especially if you're running against an incumbent. But at this point, there's no way Trump's going to help with that because he doesn't want to make Kemp look good. Where are you, Patrick, on this?
No, I mean, absolutely. But I just think that the energy level around this race, I mean, is just not, it's just not there. Like, frankly, right? There's sort of a not really necessarily has been a belief that Ossoff is, I mean, there's sort of a belief that Ossoff is favored. And so I think you tend to see that manifest in many ways, right? When you have these primaries, so, where, I think if there were a more serious effort to make Georgia really the number one or number two race in the country, to try to pick off a seat from Democrats, to actually, I think there would be a serious effort to try to clear the field, to try to elevate somebody, maybe like Dooley, maybe someone else. But the fact that you're seeing a little bit of a free for all means, okay, well, I think there's just not as much urgency around this race
as John Ossoff just continues to collect zillions of dollars. Patrick, I want to ask you before we go, and you've done you've been on with, I don't want to take too much of your time, but Texas, which you mentioned, I think Chuck and I had similar readout, which was, if you ever had a question that Donald Trump was about Donald Trump rather than the Republican Party, this should clear it up nicely for you. As a guy who has spent a long time in Republican politics, what is your reaction? All the senators, John Thune and John Barrasso and Cotton, and they were all up there, and Thune was talking about it, and it looked like someone died. I mean, like, genuinely. It was like, well, we're still gonna be supporting Cornyn, but I think they know the writing on the wall. I mean,
he just made a half a billion dollar commitment by the Senate Leadership Fund to bail Ken Paxton out of a Senate race. Sorry,
so
that's probably why they felt like something died.
Anyway, what do you make of that, Patrick? I mean, I don't want to overread it, because I do think Ken Paxton can still win that race, right? Win a general election. But what do you make of that as a Republican strategist, like looking at the big picture?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Texas has been losing the football for Democrats for such a long time that I think that there is this sense that there is this force field that you haven't had a statewide Democrat win in so long that it's almost impossible to imagine. I think the mood, in contrast to Georgia, where I think there's probably a fair amount of maybe throwing in the towel, the mood in Texas would be, I think Tallarico is, very beatable, right? I think just given that, you just go back to on the woke tweets from 2020 alone, right? And so I think there is this sense among professional Republicans that Texas is not going to be a state. This Blexus was canceled. We thought, Blexus being canceled in 2024, right? Trump wins the state by 13 points. That it just seems like a state that seems pretty far out of reach, but maybe you should be sweating it a little bit more. But it's
going to just cost more. I mean, the way we were analyzing it, Patrick, was Paxton doesn't raise money. Right? Like, he has not been a good fundraiser for this. And
doesn't really campaign, Chuck.
Senate Leadership Fund is just going to have to spend, if there'd been Cornyn, they would probably not have to spend money. I think they could walk from Texas. I'm with you. I think Cornyn, I'm a bit skeptical of Tallarico. I
think Democrats are overly optimistic about Tallarico.
I think Tallarico
before.
I know.
It wasn't like there was another young white guy who
I know.
But
at least Beto fit.
Oh, his name was Beto O'Rourke. His name ended in an O. Amazing.
But my issue with Tallarico is I feel like he's what the left thinks is a religious person. Right? It is not like what actual Southern Baptist folks in Texas. So that's why I'm a bit skeptical.
Any Southern Baptists. I think it's more the Methodist crowd.
Fair enough, but you get my drift. But the whole
maybe.
But that's not what the left thinks. The left thinks, oh look, he says Jesus, so that must mean he'll win. And it just, so I'm a little skeptical. But Paxton, if you can make it a referendum on Tallarico, well, Cornyn can do that. Paxton, it could equally be a referendum on him, and that's the danger here, don't you think, Patrick?
No, I mean, it's definitely tougher. It's tougher, right? But I think Trump was. I think it makes sense what he did, right? I mean, I think and especially we're seeing these candidates who were very much on board with him. So there's not only the dimension of Paxton being more thoroughly MAGA aligned, it would be kind of pretty out of character if he, had gone and endorsed Cornyn, he said, like he implied like he was going to do, but then backed away from it, especially with this gambit that Paxton did with the SAVE Act, which is brilliant.
Yep. Very smart.
tactician standpoint, says I'm going to withdraw from the race if you put the SAVE Act on the floor, and of course,
if you do something that
If
can't
the-
happen,
Exactly. If the Senate does something impossible, I will leave the race.
And then that really was bait for Trump to get in ultimately. But I think there's the component of Paxton being aligned with the MAGA base. There is also the component of Paxton's defense of Trump in the 2020 election aftermath, which I think is clearly a factor that overrides a lot of things, and particularly like with we look at these endorsements, right, that he has made. I think they have been a little bit more buttoned up, professional than maybe the 22 set of endorsements that he made with Andy Barr in Kentucky, right? I mean, it seems like he's playing ball.
John Sununu in New Hampshire, Mike Rogers in Michigan, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly. But I think when you have if there's going to be an exception, it's going to be for somebody who is probably has that track record of
like the ultra MAGA.
Well, then let's go. Let me bring this back to Georgia. Burt Jones, Rick Jackson. Burt Jones, absolutely there with him during 2020, is somebody he's already technically endorsed before Jackson got in the race. Now, we're a bunch of cynical political hacks here, as you know, Ruffini, and I have this one has the scent of a co-endorsement coming. If Trump, we know he doesn't like to lose, and if he thinks Jackson can win, we know what's coming, the co-endorsement. But you just made the case that when it comes to 2020, he gets pretty loyal. Mm-hmm. Would he put his money where his mouth is? I mean, would cost him a lot of money to save Jones against Jackson.
Yeah, but it really matters what the contrast is. I mean, Paxton versus Cornyn is about as clear of a MAGA versus kind of old line, old school establishment. Mm-hmm. This is not as clear, right? And so I think, Rick Jackson has the profile of a Trump style candidate. And so I think it's a lot harder for him to maybe justify. And particularly, I think just given the huge financial advantage here, it's going to be harder to bet against Rick Jackson than it was going to be to bet against Sean Cornyn.
Yeah. All right. Let's let Patrick go. Patrick, Echelon Insights, wonderful polling firm.
Please do the Substack. Do the Substack.
Intersection on Substack. Look, every time I get it, I open it and immediately read the whole thing, and I'm always jealous because it's stuff I wish I had thought of.
My only complaint, Patrick, is it sometimes takes me too long to finish it. Because
Chuck's just a slow reader. Don't worry about that.
I am.
Thanks, Patrick.
I don't have to spend as much time putting it together then.
Do less.
For me. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
See you, Patrick.
Hey, Jeffrey, can you? We got one more guest coming up at 9, but so in the 10 minutes we've got, I see a lot of people. A lot of people are kind of signing on to this as we go. Obviously, we've been going since 6. Can you just reset?
Still growing, baby. It's great.
What we know. What decision desk issue is called. And then I know there's a lot outstanding, but what are the big things we're still waiting on?
Right. So the big news of the night early on, folks just joining or joining somewhat recently, we've been talking a lot about Georgia. Well, in Kentucky, the Trump endorsed candidate Ed Gallrein defeated Thomas Massie, the incumbent who President Trump was opposing. It looks like it's probably gonna be around a 10-point gap in the end. So Massie was not able to hold on. In Georgia, we have, or I guess I could also mention, I won't bring it up, but Andy Barr, we've projected won the Republican primary for Senate.
We don't have the Kentucky Senate Democratic primary yet, do we?
No, that's true.
Still uncalled. Amy
and
McGrath
this is,
and Charles Booker.
like I said, the ghosts of candidates past. Amy McGrath and Charles Booker.
Elections past, yes. Yeah. For people who've spent too much time, and I would count myself among them, watching, and
caring
everyone
about
in this
non-competitive
call,
Kentucky Senate seats. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Currently, Charles Booker is up by about 5%.
No. By the way, in case you're wondering, Kentucky's not a runoff state.
Kentucky. They got rid of them a long time ago. They used to have them, but they got rid of them. So I would say you'd probably rather be Booker at this point.
Is Louisville in? Louisville's not even in yet.
Louisville's about 60-ish.
Yeah, 60%.
Oh, okay. Well, that's going to be his base. Yeah, that's going to be his
now,
base.
I guess the question is how
Lexington,
well,
right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, Frankfurt and Lexington we don't actually have votes from there, so that could actually make this more interesting if McGrath still is strong there. And at this point, she's run a lot, she's lost a lot. I mean, Booker also lost in 2022 badly to Rand Paul, but
Yep.
He hasn't. McGrath lost in 2018. She lost in 2020. You know, I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Right. It's going to be a very hard race
from a
for
math
Democrats to
from
be
a
competitive
math
on.
perspective.
Yeah.
There's no universe in which this is a competitive election.
So, dude,
the only competitive race in Kentucky in November might be Andy Barr's open congressional seat.
His old congressional seat, which I will go take a look at. We've got
where Alvarado's winning up. He's up big.
So Republican primary, Ralph Alvarado is the Trump endorsed candidate. He's up big. We haven't quite projected it yet, but it's you'd obviously rather be Alvarado at this point than Ryan Dotson, who's a state representative. And then on the other side of the ledger, and again, this is a seat that Republicans are going to be favored in to hold. It's a seat that President Trump carried by about 15 percentage points. But in if it's a bluer year, and this is an area that has a little bit more Democratic DNA from years past.
First of all, University of Kentucky's in it. That's not nothing.
So it's potentially a seat that could get interesting if this ends up being a really, really good cycle for Democrats.
Look, Dembo's running a corruption. He's running a banning stock trading. This is the type of congressional district that if you're running as a Democrat, you're running on issues like corruption. You're not running on bread and butter issues as much. Corruption and affordability, and that's about it. You wouldn't touch any cultural issues.
Yep. Yeah, and that, of course, I mean, in that sense, of course, the great challenge for a Democrat in this kind of district, and McGrath lost a not too different looking version of this district in 2018 by a couple points to Andy Barr. And, that was obviously a really good year for Democrats, and they couldn't swing it then. Can they do it this time? And I think the district's actually arguably a little redder now. They got rid of Frankfurt. Frankfurt was in the district, and that's really,
government
state capital. And it is there's like 3 blue counties. There's Fayette, where Lexington is. There's Frankfurt, and then there is Jefferson, where Louisville is.
Which is Louisville.
Yeah. So
let's do Georgia real quick.
Let's move to Georgia and run through those races.
Let's do Senate and governor.
Yeah,
because I think that's the other big.
The goal is to totally get rid of your voice by the end of this night.
I know. Yes. Skelly playing hurt, dude. It's his flu game.
It's his flu game. Let's go, buddy.
So Burt Jones and Rick Jackson, we've projected, will advance to Republican runoff in the gubernatorial race in Georgia. That leaves Brad Raffensperger and Chris Carr in 3rd and 4th, and neither of them will be advancing. So that'll be interesting, as we were discussing with our previous guests.
Runoff is
kind
June 16th.
June 16th.
Yeah. It's just a little bit of a MAGA kind of.
Well,
vibe.
it's old school MAGA, and please consider me MAGA. Right?
Yeah. I mean, Jackson is certainly trying to position himself in that way. Right. In the Senate race, we know that for the Republican side, we know that Mike Collins is going to advance. Representative, also potential guy who could get a Trump endorsement. And then it's a question of Derek Dooley or Buddy Carter. Carter has positioned himself much more similarly to Collins. What my voice is going. And Dooley,
nothing wrong with that. Keep working.
Dooley, though, of course, is the candidate closer to Brian Kemp. But if Dooley advances Collins, I mean,
I'm with
Kemp
you.
is going to spend a lot of money, but
that's what I'm wondering about.
Trump is going to endorse Collins, though.
I agree with.
Endorse Collins,
But does Kemp spend a bunch of money? Very, very curious. This is basically a battle of Atlanta Republicans. Go back to that if you don't mind. Quickly. Atlanta Republicans and the Savannah and his Savannah-based district. Yes. Where's there more vote out?
I think it looks like there's more vote in the Atlanta metro area.
I think you'd rather be Dooley.
You'd rather be Dooley. Okay.
I think you'd rather be Dooley at this point.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
That'd be an interesting primary. An interesting runoff. I mean, I think Collins probably wins
Kemp versus Trump. That's what we want, baby.
Kemp versus Trump round
That's good copy.
9 or whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
Totally. Yeah.
All right, let's move to the Democratic side there. Yeah.
I should say the Democratic race on the governor's side, Keisha Lance Bottoms.
We haven't called it yet.
We haven't projected it yet, but she could win outright tonight.
60 for most of this time.
But I think a looming thing is, what does Fulton do? We don't have.
I know everybody assumes that the former mayor of Atlanta is going to be fine, but she's
look what happened in DeKalb, which also has a part of the city. This is one of her worst counties in the state.
Right,
So
she's
Fulton
under
might be similar, in which
the
case,
closer to Atlanta she goes, right? So we
Yeah,
just
and
wanna
if
wait.
that's similar, then maybe she doesn't advance without a runoff. But that would be a big result for Georgia Democrats, right? Another month of a primary between Burt Jones and Rick Jackson, and Keisha Lance Bottoms, if it happens, being able to kind of turn to the general. That's a good result.
Look at this though. The rest of the field, who I think we all thought were pretty good candidates, they just didn't get traction.
I mean, Michael Thurmond
can't bring 15.
At least
Michael Thurmond he's a statewide office holder.
He
He's
was
I think the
last Democrat
labor secretary
in the
right?
state. Yeah, he was labor secretary.
Yeah,
They
elect yes, Georgia elects a labor secretary. In case you're wondering, or has done that.
Hey, just
done that.
One quick thing,
and then of course
Georgia
the former
governor,
Republican lieutenant governor running as a Democrat, Jeff Duncan.
Yes,
did not break double digits.
Yeah, he's down here.
And just to affirm, I'm monitoring our Slack to Jeffrey's point. DeKalb moves towards. If DeKalb moves more towards Keisha Lance Bottoms in election day voting,
which we don't have,
likely she makes it without a runoff. But that's what the decision desk projection team is kind of looking at for people who want like an inside look there.
And then very quickly, we've got those Supreme Court races in Georgia.
Yeah,
we should touch on those.
These have been curious. So we have two Republican.
And these are general elections today.
So
that's what's very
noting.
confusing. This is
confusing to people is that they had their
not a primary,
general elections for state Supreme Court in the same date as the party primary. And so I think Democrats were feeling somewhat optimistic because a lot of the turnout numbers and early voting and whatnot suggested, hey, we're and right now there are more votes in the Democratic primary than the Republican primary, which would seem to have potentially bode well if they could turn this into really a partisan race. And I guess the question mark is that they haven't necessarily. The other one of the Supreme Court races, which I am attempting. Well,
it'll come.
Yeah, it doesn't come if you hit the wrong number. Which
stupid technology.
No, dang it. Okay, let's see if this one worked. It'll be my luck that we didn't put them in. Yeah,
there you go.
There it
so
is.
Sarah Hawkins Warren was the incumbent, or is the incumbent, and will continue to be the incumbent. She's won easily against a former Democratic state senator, Jim Jordan. But in the other race, it's a lot closer, which is pretty fascinating because.
Well, which one of these is not like the other? Well, one's an African American candidate.
Yes, Miracle Rankin,
and
the
one
candidate,
is not.
and the other one is
Jen Jordan is a white Democrat, and Miracle Rankin is a black Democrat.
And
which
Miracle
is Chuck's
Rankin,
point about black turnout post voting right.
And Miracle Rankin is God, what am I doing with this random race I've accidentally brought in?
Everyone cares about the state Senate 7 district.
Right.
Yeah,
it is. The big one, good example that Nathaniel Rakich, or one of our earlier guests, brought up was Clayton County, which is a majority black county. It's just south of Atlanta, the city of Atlanta. Rankin is getting 70% of the vote there, but in the other race, it's basically 50-50. And that's not a county that should be 50-50 if Democrats are doing well.
By the way, Democrats got to feel pretty good about Rankin's chances if Fulton County has not reported a single vote yet.
Yes, that could be very
significant
very big.
Result. Yep.
Yeah.
And one other point I want to point out about Georgia is just look at total turnout so far. And Democrats are out polling Republicans here.
With a lot more to drive Republicans, a lot more competitive races to drive Republicans to the ballot.
That's not a small deal. That's
just to point that out. You've got 600,000 or so votes. Or sorry, I'm looking. That's the votes remaining. You have 350.
You're
6.
I get your numbers here. I've got them.
Oh, thank you.
I've got them here. Yeah, it is 464,000 so far in the Democratic. I'm just using the governor's race. That's usually the highest turnout of races. And the Republican side is 458. Look, it's close.
Yeah, close.
But there's going to be a lot more vote coming in out of Fulton than there will be for the Dem side. Point is, it looks like Democrats are going to outpoll Republicans in election day, even with election day vote. We already knew they did it in the early ballot. Look, it's a swing state, and as Patrick Ruffini said, that your total primary turnout between the two parties in a swing state can be is probably a more reliable indicator than trying to use polling and other things.
Yep.
Well, I think the fact that you've got,
go ahead, Jeffrey.
I think the fact that you actually had at least, the one complication there is if one side had not had any like senator, governor primaries that were interesting, but the fact that both parties did have at least one, in this case, governor, because John Ossoff is unopposed. I think Democrats would based off of that and the result in the public service commissioner elections last year that they won easily, like, these are things that they take as good signs. I will say that if the Republicans end up holding both of these technically nonpartisan state Supreme Court races, that would be a little bit of a feather in their cap.
Yeah, not a small
Hey,
deal.
Can we, before we bring in Jacob Rabashkin from the Inside Elections, our last guest, let's do a quick projection. Lauren, you want to hit it?
Jones,
former U.S. Senator Doug Jones
has won the Democratic nomination for governor in Alabama.
Okay,
it's Tommy Tuberville in the under the radar race that Chuck Todd is determined.
I'm determined. I'm
trying to make fetch happen.
I'm going to make fetch happen. Exactly. You beat me to it. Damn you with the fetch. You and I, our brains are way too mind melded.
We're mind melding. We spend too much time together.
Fetched.
Hey, let's bring Jacob in.
Let's bring Jacob in. We're going to have this conversation because I've got a fun trivia question for you guys. Because we are going to have a rematch between Tommy Tuberville and Doug Jones in a governor's race after facing off in a Senate race. Now, I believe the last time. Now, I believe that. So we've got. The only repeat rematch is usually Senate to Senate,
totally
Gov to Gov.
Right.
I cannot find a single other instance ever where you had a rematch in a different statewide race. I have looked. I've been obsessed with this because
that is a fascinating.
So I got one for you.
Get me. I knew it. I knew of all people to have on, Jacob would be the man.
Well,
Get me, Jacob.
It's only because it's a little cheap, and it's only because I'm writing about this state for the newsletter this week. The Maine Senate race Maine governor's race, 1994.
Angus King, Susan Collins,
and
Joe Brennan, right?
Joe Brennan, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Angus King beat them both. It was two. He was the independent.
Susan Collins lost.
And 1996. Brennan in 96.
Susan Collins beats
Joe
Brennan.
Brennan was the Dem nominee. Oh, interesting.
In the Senate race.
Good pull.
So
that's the answer. That's fantastic. I knew.
Great job by you.
I was going to bring up the Angus King, Susan Collins, because that's another favorite trivia question of mine when we had how many senators had faced off against each other in elections.
Yes.
Right. You had, I think, Sununu and Shaheen served together and ran against each other.
They ran against each other.
Each other twice. Yeah.
Twice.
Daschle and Tim Johnson.
There, you had Daschle and John. No, you had Thune and
Johnson.
Thune and Johnson was one.
Daschle. Right.
I believe you had Ensign and Reed for a period of time, right? Because Ensign loses to Reed and then wins the next time. And then you had it was this Angus King, Susan Collins. They'd never faced off as Senate races, but they'd faced off in that governor's race. But man, it's the Joe Brennan poll. Man, Rabashkin, that's awesome. That is the only other one.
Brennan.
Yeah.
The only race that Susan Collins has ever lost.
The only race that she's ever lost.
And you know what? In that race, by the way, in that race in 94, she ran as a right winger. She ran as a super conservative, and she moved very much back to the center for the 96 race. I think Olympia Snow wins the Senate race in 94, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, she crushed
the
other member of Congress whose name I'm blanking on because George Mitchell didn't run for re-election.
John Baldacci? Was that a Baldacci?
No, it wasn't Baldacci.
No. That's pre-Baldacci.
Pre-Baldacci.
Anyway, Jacob,
we're going deep on Maine.
Give us your Georgia. Well, you want to start Kentucky, Georgia, or where do you want to start?
And we need to do some Pennsylvania House races since we got Jacob.
Oh yeah, actually, you want to do that first, Jacob?
Let's do that with Jacob
because that's still up in the air a little.
We're going to Pennsylvania or Georgia?
Yeah,
we're going to start in Pennsylvania
first
because we haven't talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're watching a couple House races here. The biggest surprise right now is I kind of wonder in Pennsylvania 3, that race where it was getting so much attention between Chris Rabb, the progressive candidate backed by AOC, and Sharif Street, who is the more moderate establishment candidate. Ayla Stanford's still in the lead. Now, I don't know if this is going to hold because this is early vote, but Ayla Stanford was one of the leading candidates whose campaign essentially imploded a couple weeks ago. And here she is sitting on 40%. I don't know what's going to happen here. I think it'll be very funny if after a couple weeks of Rabb and Street.
Why did it? Tell us the story. I don't think everybody knows the story. Like what unraveled about it?
I mean, she had some bad interviews. It's truly kind of a classic, like, you almost don't believe that this kind of thing can unravel a campaign these days. And yet sometimes you do a couple bad interviews. She pulled out of a debate last minute. And things just started to fall apart for her. Her biggest backer in this race, which was 314 Action, the outside Democratic super PAC that spends money to support candidates with a science background. Ayla Stanford is a physician or a surgeon, very decorated, highly accomplished healthcare provider.
She has Dwight Evans' endorsement, the incumbent.
She was on paper totally, set to be a real contender here, but her polling went from being kind of the front runner status to falling off a cliff essentially in the last couple of weeks. 314 pulled their ad reservations. Her campaign was essentially left for dead by a lot of people. Wow. We got a lot of.
I love when outside groups do that, and then the candidate wins.
And
then they'll claim victory.
They're going to send a great press release.
Totally, they were with her from the start. Can we talk about?
Hey, they
Bob
spent
Beard?
some money on text messages. I saw that. I was looking to see if they'd spent anything else, and they had like one more thing. They'd spent like $8,000 on like sending out text messages on behalf of her. So they're gonna totally claim it. They're like, "Oh, we were still in the race."
Can we talk about Pennsylvania 7? Is it 7? Bob Beers?
Yes, I can bring.
We haven't looked at that one. Jacob, can you talk to that one a little bit? Because he's kind of an interesting. Like when I ask my national Democratic friends about like, hey, who's interesting? Oh, Robert Brooks, Bob Beers, Robert Brooks, Bob Brooks. They always
there's
point,
a Bob Harvey in the first, and there's a Bob Brooks in the seventh.
Him.
So.
Bob Brooks is like, yeah, this is like an interesting guy. Like, what do you make of that? I mean, he looks like he's gonna. Well, I shouldn't say he's going to win. He's ahead right now.
Yeah.
Can you tell people about him in that race?
This is the classic toss-up district. It was Trump won it in 2016, Biden won it in 2020. Trump won it again over Harris in 2024. It's this kind of Lehigh Valley, Allentown, Bethlehem, kind of hard scrapple town.
The swing area of Pennsylvania for the last 35 years of my professional career. Right. Yeah, okay, yeah, I got it.
and it's the type of seat that Democrats absolutely have to be winning if they're taking back the majority. It's also one that we'll know the outcome of relatively early on election night in November, which always makes it fun as well because it's on the East Coast.
A little bellweathery. Yeah.
I think when all this got going, I think Democrats first they wanted Susan Wild to run again. She was the one who lost very narrowly to Ryan McKenzie in the 2024
race. It was very tight. Yeah.
She lost by about a point. But they consolidated around Brooks, the national folks did, in large part because of the coalition that he was able to build. So he was recruited into the race by Governor Shapiro. Brooks is a 20-year firefighter veteran. He was the head of the firefighters union as well.
Really good personal story.
Yes. And looks the part. He's great in person. Shapiro got him into the race. I think there was concern about one of the other candidates, Lamont McClure, who's currently in second place there, who on paper also looks the part, Northampton County executive. That's the swing county in the swing district in the swing state. Yeah. But he couldn't raise, 2 nickels to save his life. And so the Labor and the National Democrats went looking for somebody else. They found Brooks, but he also has been able to get an endorsement from Bernie Sanders. He's working with the same ad consultancy that's behind Zoran Mamdani. He's been able to pull from both the establishment wing and the progressive wing, and in a way that makes him pretty formidable. He's got a real primary. Obviously, there are 3 other candidates in this race, all of whom have somewhat credible campaigns and arguments to make. But it looks like he's going to be able to get this nomination, and he will instantly be, I think, one of the top tier Democratic House candidates anywhere in the country.
And actually, Jacob, I was curious if you had anything to add about, because Lead Left, which we know is probably got some Republican connections, came in and spent some money on behalf of McClure. And it looks like, I mean, obviously he was county executive, so he's a well-known figure in Northampton. It's just interesting to me. He is in second, and Ryan Crosswell was sort of the other major candidate in this race in terms of fundraising.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, look, I kind of always expected McClure to come in second. He's been on the ballot a bunch of times before in the major county in the district. His dad, who he shares a name with, his dad was also Lamont McClure, was a official in Carbon County, which is the most Republican part of this district.
Yeah.
And so, he's got a little juice there, clearly not enough to make a real dent in Brooks's win here. Wow. But when this race got going, certainly before Brooks got in, but even after Brooks got in the early days of his candidacy, McClure was the polling frontrunner. His campaign had polling late last year, beginning of this year, showing him ahead. And it simply was, I think, because he could not raise money. And that's just a death knell for a highly competitive House race, that Republicans wanted to boost him, or the group that we think is Republican funded wanted to boost him. It's not like he's got kind of super damaging baggage like some of the other candidates that group is backing.
Right.
It's just that clearly he
was the Texas runoff candidate.
Yes, in Texas 35.
Billy,
yeah.
can we do a little business on Kentucky, Lauren?
Let's do it.
That
Sorry,
Lauren, here we go. This is the ghosts of candidates past have come
Charles
back
Booker,
to the present. Yeah.
Decision Desk HQ is projecting that Charles Booker will win the Democratic nomination for Senate in Kentucky, which will put him in a matchup with Representative Andy Barr, who has won the Republican nomination. Booker is now about 11 points ahead of Amy McGrath, another former Senate candidate. Booker lost in 2022. McGrath lost in 2020 as Senate nominees, and they were facing off. Now, it was the final championship.
Become a professional fundraiser. She raises
people who've
so
raised a lot
much
of money for very badly losing campaigns,
and she loses every time. But she raised a ton. She way outraised Booker in this race, and
she's got a great email list, buddy. Yeah,
I know.
A lot of people that don't live in.
She probably has sold it a few times.
A lot of people that don't live in Kentucky gave Amy McGrath money, apparently. Again,
anyway,
we
just want to get that
fighter pilot. She's got it's been a great story. It's worked well for her.
I think the sliding doors moment there is if she had beaten Andy Barr back in 2018. She loses
totally.
By 3
we
points.
talked about Kentucky 6.
So it was really close.
Yeah.
This is this Kentucky 6th in 2018. It was a very close race.
I think she still probably runs against McConnell in 2020 and gets washed.
You think she does?
Oh, yeah. No,
a sitting incumbent, and that's,
I think she would have done better than losing by 21 points, which is what she did.
Sure.
And I don't think she would have had the Booker primary. I think if she had been coming at it as the congresswoman from Lexington, as opposed to the woman who lost, I think that changes it. But then also, where does that leave Andy Barr, right? Who's now on track?
Well, what if we had a battle of the Senate? What if it had been the battle of the Andes?
Bashir against
and Andy Barr. Yeah.
I mean,
I think Bashir loses that. What do you think?
Oh
Jacob?
no, Bashir loses.
Yeah,
a Senate race.
Senate. I think it's super close, though.
Yeah.
It's a tough year for Republicans.
I think it's like 53.
It's super close. It's probably like, who did Paul beat? The guy the blonde-haired guy, who was Chris. I want to say it's
the
Chris
mayor.
Well,
he beat Jim Gray in 16, and he beat Jack Kingston in 10.
Jack Conway. Jack Conway. Good-looking guy from
That's what I mean. The blonde hair that had the as Donald Trump would say, it has the central casting. Yeah, right, central casting.
No, I think Bashir would have been competitive, but I think that race ends up like a slightly better like Phil Bredesen in 2018, right? Like Bredesen loses by 11.
Probably, or Corker Ford in even 06, right? Which is like a
Blackburn
6-point race.
Yeah. Oh, I think the Corker race was closer than that. It was Corker almost lost. Yeah.
No, that was
Corker in 06. Oh yeah, no, that was close.
Wasn't that a 6-point race? At the end of the day?
I think Ford. I thought Ford was closer, but anyway,
it was close. It was competitive, but it was not. Yeah.
2 points or 3 points.
Wow. Okay. I did not realize Harold came back.
51-48. Yeah.
Well,
and that's a real turning moment.
But you know what? Andy Bashir is too smart to. They tried to sucker him into the Senate race, and he was like, absolutely not.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people. I've heard a lot of consultants who are trying to get other people to run for president who lamented that Andy Bashir didn't run for the Senate. And it's like, because you didn't want him to run for president.
Correct.
Sort of thing.
I mean, talk about the ghost of Phil Bredesen and Steve Bullock, popular governors who lose.
While we have you here, before we leave Kentucky, Kentucky 6 is the only potentially competitive House race for November in the state of Kentucky.
Yeah.
What are you guys saying about it?
I mean, at the moment, we're still skeptics to be pretty blunt, but it is the kind of district that, look, if the president's trajectory continues on its current route, or if it does anything except stop right now and get better before Election Day. This is the kind of district that I think we're going to have to start talking about. President's underwater by 20 plus points. Gas is $4.50 a gallon nationally. Yeah. Diesel is $5.50.
So it's a wave district. This is a district that would be a wave district.
And it's important to remember, right? This is not the same district that McGrath nearly won in 18.
That's right.
They did send in reinforcements after that race in redistricting, and so look, I think either Zach Dembo or Sherilyn Stevenson, who are the two top candidates in that Democratic primary, are real credible candidates. They both raised money. They have outside backers. Dembo's got some backers. Stevenson's got some backers. Emily's List, groups like that. And they would be able to have resources if this turns into a real race. But at the moment, right, this one sits in the kind of tranche of seats that are like Trump 15 to 20%.
Yeah,
and like,
that's
look,
big...
if the generic ballot like that New York Times poll had it among likely voters is really D plus 14, which I don't believe it is, but if it is on November 3rd or 4th, we're going to be talking about this district.
All right, let's look. We're gonna do a whole. We're gonna round up in all the states. Let's now go to Alabama very quickly. We're still waiting on the Senate primary. For what it's worth, let's go to the Republican Senate primary.
There's just not a lot of votes.
Not a ton of vote.
Come on, Alabama.
We're just waiting to see if Barry Moore becomes the official nominee.
Well,
I think he is. Yeah,
and that's the Trump endorsed.
I think there's a good
candidate.
chance that ends up being a. Well, I mean, it's early. But
what are the Alabama runoff rules?
Being a runoff.
Yeah,
it's 50%.
50.
It is there 50.
Same.
Okay.
Yep. And Steve
Moore
Marshall
right
is the
now,
Attorney General. Barry Moore is endorsed by Donald Trump.
And then Jared Hudson is a former Navy SEAL who's come in and run and gotten some outside support and raised a fair bit of money. And actually was running in second and even jumped ahead of Moore in our polling average, but we didn't have a lot of polls.
Yes. Boy, this is still a slow roll here.
Woo. Yeah, we got a long way to go.
One Qantas survey from a couple days ago that had him in first, which I think really was a bad data.
Like, whoa,
Jacob, I as everybody has been making fun of me tonight that I'm trying to make fetch happen with the Doug Jones race, but where do you guys have that Alabama governor? Are you in a likely situation or a lean?
We're in a solid right now. It's interesting. So J Mart came on our show a month or two ago, and this was one of his kind of sleeper.
Yeah, he and I are obsessed with the Southern. We think there's going to be a Southern. We just think there's going to be more Southern upsets than people realize because of the black vote issue.
Yeah. And look, if you go back to 18, right, Kay Ivey's first election in her own right against Walt Maddox, who conservative Democrat, been mayor of Tuscaloosa forever, essentially. And he lost by 20, give or take. You say, all right, maybe the environment's a little bit better. Tuberville is a worse candidate than Kay Ivey. Doug Jones may be a little bit better candidate than Walt Maddox. Can you talk yourself into a 10-point race? Maybe. But,
I could talk myself into a 10-point race.
How about a lawsuit that sort of
I would not be
how about a residency issue lawsuit that hangs over his head the entire time because voters keep filing these lawsuits challenges about his residency?
If voters care, but they didn't care when the two guys ran against each other for Senate. And I know that's different, but
I think people do take a governor's vote more seriously than Senate.
But Jim is right though, Chuck. Residency stuff is like campaign finance violations. It's harder to make.
It is. It is. Yeah. But they're spending other people's money.
You don't even know where this money is coming from. No one cares. All right, Jacob Roboshkin. Jacob is
well. Hang on. No. We got more because we're trying to round the bend. Oregon. What are you watching in Oregon tonight? We're not staying on till Oregon gets called. Trust us. But that governor's race is going to be competitive. She's not very popular, just like the previous governor was. What do you expect there? And is there a Republican that Kotek should fear more than any other?
I mean, look, I think that she is lucky that she gets to run in as good a year for Democrats as this is shaping up to be. Being governor of Oregon is like, defense against the dark arts in Harry Potter. Like, this job clearly sucks, and they like.
Yeah, they all end up unpopular. You're so right. Like remember John Kitzhaber? Jeez.
Yes.
Kitzhaber, I think, is the last Democrat to win Oregon by double digits in a governor's race.
The first time he ran, if I remember.
Probably,
yeah.
I like Chris. What about Yale's own Chris Dudley? Worst free throw percentage in the history of the NBA.
Yeah, I mean,
he came close once, but you're exactly right. This year is a good year to be a Democrat, even an unpopular Democrat.
But still,
if he couldn't win in 2010,
you're totally
yeah.
I mean, the guy is tall, right? He's got that
6'11".
going for him.
Yep.
But
that's about it.
I think either him or Drazen would give Kotek a run for her money. That's a race that she will have to pay attention to. The DGA might have to spend there. It's just hard to see, absent a true fireable offense, because it's hard to beat governors even when the environment's in your favor. People don't like throwing out their incumbent governor.
I always say the second hardest thing to do in politics is to defeat an incumbent governor, because the hardest is to defeat a sitting president, right? Like, these are just we voters tend to want to give governors a second term.
Hey, Jacob, we got a projection for you, actually.
Okay, let's do it.
He's here.
Oh, shoot, I might have jumped on Lauren here. I don't know. Lauren, do we have the sixth district? No graphic.
I don't know if he got ready for that one yet.
No worries, no worries.
He can get the music up. He can play the music. I learned how to do that
because we do have a projection in the Democratic primary.
There we
to win over Sherilyn Stevenson, and so that Dimbo will face, I believe, Ralph Alvarado.
Yeah, Ralph Alvarado.
Right.
Which I think we've projected, but
this is the Matt Bevin. This is the Matt Bevin.
Stepped away for a minute, so So this
Chuck,
is.
Do you remember?
This is the bar seat.
Do you remember Fennis Dembo?
Baby. University of Wyoming.
Of Sports Illustrated, University of Wyoming, the best player you've never heard of. This is probably before Jeffrey and Jacob were born. But I
Wyoming
remember that it was yesterday.
I think he took him to the Sweet 16.
Wyoming?
Yeah, I think he did.
Fennis Dembo and Zach Dembo, no relation, because Fennis Dembo is African-American. If you were wondering, it's just the same last name. And it's also, we've been on live for 3.5 hours. So this is when I
do what you gotta do.
My bag.
We have done Burt Jones, White Evans, and Fennis Dembo.
We're trending old.
We are so trending old because
I got a Wade Boggs comparison coming later.
Yeah, that's more that's more recent than Dewey Evans.
Just there was somebody in the chat asked about this earlier, and I wanted to make sure we got to it before we sign off. Basically, an update on what's happening with the closer of the two state Supreme Court races in Georgia.
We're waiting on Fulton, which is a big one.
Yes, Charlie Bethel still leading. He's up by about 7 points now. A lot more. The map is filled in. This is Bethel's the incumbent, who's more Republican aligned. Miracle Rankin is the Democratic aligned candidate in what is technically a nonpartisan race. But yes, big looming thing is that 200,000 votes from Fulton County have not come in. Now there are more votes. I mean, that's not even a quarter of the votes outstanding, based on our estimate. But that's obviously a big chunk of them, and it will be a blue leaning chunk.
Right.
How blue leaning is important.
That's going to be the question. Yeah.
Well, I mean, right, because he's ahead by 16. He's ahead by 81,000 votes. I mean, it'd have to be a big chunk. Not that it couldn't be.
The's two entities that really are
very
huge.
So,
well, and the other person though that is waiting for that Fulton drop is probably Derek Dooley, who is going to be the one Republican. Whatever Republicans are in Fulton, we think are going to be Dooley Republicans, and that's what would cement his path to
Republicans left in Buckhead.
Dooley also holding on in Clark County. I guess the name still counts for something. That's Mike Collins. That's Mike Collins' territory. That's Athens. Yeah.
So Jacob, since you blew us all away with that incredible trivia question on Maine, you do it.
Shout out Joe Brennan.
So Vince Dooley, I did the deep dive on Vince Dooley's Senate, the attempt to recruit him to run against Mac Mattingly in the summer of '85. He dragged that out. Vince Dooley dragged out the Willie or Won't He run in the summer, and in fact, it was so. It was July. Think about this: on July 25th. 1985, a month before the start of the season, he finally shut it down. Amazing. But he had sort of let it out there 3 weeks that he was thinking about joining the race. All of a sudden, people were like, well, you got to coach the team, and all of this. And Skelly looked it up.
Looked up the record. Yeah. What was George's record that year, Skelly?
What a great year for him.
8-4. Not a great year for them.
Not a great year.
But that's right. But look, back then, it was Democrats trying.
So.
By the way,
Yeah.
Back then, it was Democrats trying to recruit Vince Dooley, and this is back in the when the conservative Democrats were the dominant fixture of. He was definitely a Sam Nunn type of Democrat. Vince Dooley was. And in fact, it was Sam Nunn that was trying to recruit him into the race.
A Zell Miller kind of Democrat.
Yeah.
And just another update. Keisha Lance Bottoms still above 50.
Wow.
Below 60
down a little
now.
bit. Yeah.
And she did do a little bit better in the DeKalb election day vote.
But not enough for us to call it.
A little bit better. But Fulton is the big question.
He's still waiting.
Yeah.
All right. Let's let Jacob get his beauty rest. You don't look that good if you don't get 10, 12 hours of sleep. Jacob, you're the man. Go check out Inside Elections, nonpartisan political handicapping site. Love it. Shout out to the original Stu Rothenberg.
And by the way, Nathan's got to be happy that I snuck some Oregon politics.
Oregon, totally.
Yeah.
Nathan Gonzalez, the best.
Nobody loves Oregon State college baseball like Nathan Gonzalez.
No one is nicest man in Washington, Nathan Gonzalez. All
That's
right.
what I'm always
Thanks,
saying.
Jacob.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Jacob. Too.
We want to do final thoughts, folks. Skelly, you want to start?
Yeah. Obviously it was another scalp. I don't feel bad saying that for
you may get canceled. That's all right.
That terminology. It's just another person taken down by President Trump's endorsement. And it's a further evidence of his dominance within the Republican Party. Now, it's not Massie didn't get absolutely smoked, but he's going to lose by about 10 or so. And it's just further confirmation.
Yeah. Look, this is Donald Trump's party, right? Even in the Georgia Senate race. Look, we could have a couple of interesting moments in Georgia, right? And Georgia, of course, has been the most independent state when it comes to Republican politics, thanks to Brian Kemp. If we do get Derek Dooley versus Mike Collins in that runoff, we know who Trump's going to endorse. The question is, how hard does Brian Kemp work for Dooley? Right?
Yeah.
Does this become, and does he really try to will it across? I mean, how much does Senate Leadership Fund care about who comes across? Will they care? Do they want to risk getting into a fight with Trump? My guess is no. Right. So, but that's kind of interesting in watching that. Rick Jackson versus Burt Jones.
That'll be a good one.
Because Trump's endorsed Burt Jones.
Yeah.
Rick Jackson is saying, hey, I love Trump. I'm $1 million donor, baby. He's $1 million baby.
I think that's the most interesting. Those two races, those two runoffs are interesting for sure.
That's really going to be, what does Trump, how hard does Trump work for Burt Jones? Yep. When Rick, here's one thing we do know about Donald Trump. He always, he will always fall for somebody who's rich.
Yes.
He always will fall for somebody.
To that.
And Rick Jackson's rich.
Yep. Very rich, billionaire rich.
And he will look, he allows rich people to flip-flop.
Yep.
If they flip his direction.
Yep. I will just add, look, it is going to be a very good month for Donald Trump's iron grip on the Republican Party, right? We started with the.
But is it a good month for the Republican Party?
And it is not going to be a good month for the Republican Party. Well said, Chuck. We started with the Indiana State Senate races, 5 out of the 7 Trump beats. We went to this past Saturday, Bill Cassidy, the incumbent Republican senator, finishes 3rd. Donald Trump's preferred candidate, Julia Letlow, leads the primary, likely to win a runoff. Tonight, Massie loses. I think 7 days from now, we're going to probably see another incumbent senator, John Cornyn, fall to a Trump-endorsed candidate. Like, good for Trump, not good for Republican Party.
Because all of a sudden,
those two lines are moving in opposite directions.
With Ken Paxton, if he's the Republican nominee in Texas just became a whole hell of a lot more expensive for Republicans.
Way more. I still think Republicans hold it, but again, that's at a minimum of $30-ish million investment.
But who does it come to? But it comes at the expense of which campaign?
Somebody.
John Sununu.
Right. That would be one.
Yeah. That's,
good luck, Michelle Tafoya. You're not going to get any cash in that Minnesota Senate race.
Watley.
Michael Watley might be in trouble in North Carolina, right? Like you can start to see, certain places may not get, the smaller cheap states, they're going to get all the money, right? But those
Nebraska
slightly more expensive, right? Michigan, I think Mike Rogers, because of what's happening on the Democratic side, is probably going to be okay too. But any place where it's more
North
expensive,
Carolina is the one I would circle. Where
New Hampshire and North Carolina,
very expensive, and New Hampshire's expensive because the Boston media market, and it's not going to be easy. All right. Well,
one other thing that I think's worth, that I know I'm going to get up in the middle of the night to look for, is this Supreme Court race in Georgia, because because it's tied into something else we've been tracking tonight. Total vote of the two parties in turnout in the state of Georgia. It looks like Democrats are going to be slightly ahead of Republicans. If it's more than we think because of the Fulton turnout, and we have nothing out of Fulton right now, it likely flips this Supreme Court race, which then would be indicative of a little bit more of an enthusiasm gap. Would you agree with that, Skelly?
Yeah, I think that's seems like a very plausible path for where things could go. Yeah.
Jeffrey Skelly, MVP of the night,
Always.
battling a cold given to him by his infectious child.
Yeah.
Manages to make it through 3.5 hours of live.
The voice is still there too. Yeah.
It started, but it
wasn't. Hey, let me tell you, it would have been a no-go.
Gargle some salt water, my friend. All right. Hey, are we doing the for sure next
Texas?
Tuesday? We are, right? The Texas Raw.
It is.
There's other stuff to talk about.
There's other stuff too. I know.
There's a couple of other runoffs
for sure, but I thought we were. Yeah.
Oh, we are. That's
okay.
too
So
big
we
a-
will be back,
Oh,
folks.
We'll
Thank
see
you
you
for
next
joining
week.
us.
Terrific turnout. Appreciate it, everybody.
Go read Decision Desk HQ Substack. Go read Chuck's. Go listen to Chuck's.
Just
podcast,
jump on
the Chuck ToddCast.
And right now, you're going to miss the live stream. Just jump on DecisionDeskHQ.com,
Yeah,
baby.
totally.
That's all you need to
Love
know.
it. All right.
All right.
Go Nats.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye, guys.